hurts to see you smile like a dagger in me. She just seems so juvenile. I just want it to be me. I wanna set your world on fire. Oh, you're so sure I'll stick around. Oh, my heart drops when you play around. How can you be up when I'm down? Don't wanna think about it right now. Maybe you just wanna be friends, but there is a fight when we are talking. Maybe you just wanna pretend, but I can read between the lines. Even if I can't deny that all the things you say are hurting, still wanna be with you. I think you want it too. 'Cause baby, I don't wanna play. Baby, I don't wanna play. Oh, even if I can't deny that all the things you say are hurting, still wanna be with you. I think you want it too. 'Cause baby, I don't wanna play. No, baby, I don't wanna play. No, baby, I don't wanna play. Baby, I don't wanna play.
I see something, it's coming up on the horizon. Oh, let me clear my head and get rid of the distractions. Oh, I was down when I saw you in the clouds. Out of phase, filled with doubt. I was drifting in and out, levitate, fade away. I had left both time and space, but you just caught my eye. Hey, nah, 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 nah. Please won't you come over? Let me get to know ya. Hey, nah, 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 nah. Delve into emotion, leave us in this moment. Let your mind be free. Stop holding back, 'cause you can fight it. Oh, I don't know your name, but something in me has ignited. Oh, I was down when I saw you in the clouds. Out of phase, filled with doubt. I was drifting in and out, levitate, fade away. I had left both time and space, but you just caught my eye. Hey, nah, 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 nah. Please won't you come over? Let me get to know ya. Hey, nah, 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 nah. Delve into emotion, leave us in this moment. You look at me like I'm crazy when I shut my feelings out. You look at me like I'm different, still you stay 'cause you feel something real. Get so lost in my moments, doesn't mean I don't need you. I fell in love with your colors, they kinda tell me what I'm thinking. I fell in love with the way we are. pouring cup after cup after cup. Yeah, it's just the way we do it. Anything just to block out the real life, real life. Yeah, we're loving the way they think we're so messed up. Even if what we're doing is bad, there's so many emotions. Sharing stories that we never had, yeah, none is real. I think we're searching for reasons not to be like them. We fly around like paper planes, they never know where we will fall. Nobody can see us, still they wanna tear us apart. There's something different about the way we are. There's something different about us. 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 Something different about the way we are. There's something different about us. Something different about the way we are. There's something different about us. I'm tired of waiting, waiting. I'm tired of waiting, waiting. I'm tired of waiting, waiting. So let's be crazy, crazy. I'm tired of waiting, 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 I'm tired of waiting, waiting. I'm tired of waiting, waiting. I'm tired of waiting, waiting. So let's be crazy, crazy. I'm tired of waiting, waiting, waiting,
Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 2 here at Royale Masters. It's Championship Sunday, and we're excited for some great matchups. I'm Rich Slayton, joining me, my good buddy Andrew Guy, for some great Clash Royale action. Andrew, you and EB7, Eric Benamou, were here yesterday for the crazy Swiss bracket portion. Now we're down to our top 16, and man, looks like we got a really good lineup today.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Once again here at Royale Masters, over 400 people throwing their names in the hat, a lot of big name pros out there, and we're down to 16. Some of the names you might recognize, most of the names I think you will recognize, and there's a couple people out there that are starting to build a name for themselves. Tuvia you might know a little bit, Toad you might have heard of on ladder, but these guys had some exceptional play yesterday. And again, Rich, I think one of the most fascinating things about Royale Masters is our really cool, somewhat twist on a duels format, because it brings really interesting decks to the competition.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this whole idea where you can play cards again if you lose, but if you win, they get out. One thing I think that we can maybe see about this in the future is the potential to allow BO5s in a duel mode.
Wow.
Right? We've been in best of 3 for duel mode because of how much it limits it. This might open up that possibility in the long run to get those full 5-game back-and-forth battles. And even within this best of 3, it's still a really fun format.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point that you make, because you talk about BO3s with regular duel mode. There's just too many cards that you can't use. But this is just a little bit different. Let's take a look at our format, as you were just talking about, and as I kind of mentioned, over 400 players throwing their names in the hat yesterday in our Swiss bracket. We went through all 7 rounds, which was great, because we did 6 rounds the first week, but then people were wondering, so you know what, we're like, forget about it. Let's just do all 7. It narrowed that competition even more, and it made that 5th, 6th, and 7th round really, really top-tier gameplay. And then the top 4 from each round advanced to day 2 where we are at now with 16 players. It is all going to be BO3, and it's going to be single elimination. And Rich, it's all about those points and that money.
And that's the important thing, right, is that we're not just talking about this small competition this weekend. This is an overall larger competition. So this weekend, yes, you are playing for placement. You're playing for this cash, $2,000 or $2,400 to first place. But every single win you get here, every single placement you get, these all go towards points to make that final big playoff push where $10,000 is the grand prize for the #1 player overall in a competition. So lots of opportunities, even for you watching at home. By the way, if you're watching at home and you go, hey, I think I can do this, well, guess what? There are still a few more weeks left to qualify, so you can jump in as well.
That's right. And talking about players that have jumped in and have made it into our top 16, let's take a look at our bracket. And this is all about the open qualifiers. This means any person can be in this top 16. All you got to do is join our Discord, follow us on Twitter, and then end up making it through that first Saturday, right? It's pretty tough. 7 rounds, pros out there, and of course, 400 other people. But there is 16 players. We'll take a look at that bracket in just 1 second. I think they're going to go and fix it up here. But yeah, BO3s, and here we go. There we go. There is our players from yesterday. These are the 16 that made it through, Rich.
Yeah, and some pretty big names here. Lucas GSM, longtime player out of Portugal, good top-tier quality semi-pro. Of course, Lucas in here, Ian out of the U.S., but right now we have, speaking of Americans, one of the most popular players out of America, the young Magic Master Bag, up against Novel, who some of you might also know him from as Roman off of Twitter. A little bit different matchup here. You have one very traditional player and one player who is anything but traditional.
Yeah, yesterday Eric and I were having a blast watching Bag play. It does seem that he's a big fan of Balloon, but I think the most impressive thing about Bag's play and the decks that he brings to the competition, Eric was saying that, Bag is a guy that will always play his Clash Royale no matter what the meta, no matter what happens, no matter how favored a card is or is not. Bag will put a deck together that he enjoys to play. And I think the most impressive thing about it, Rich, is that the best decks in the game have this incredible synergy about them. Bags don't always have great synergy, but he figures a way to make his opponents play out of their comfort, and he knows when to attack with what, even though it might seem a little weird on paper.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about weird on paper, looking at this one. I mean, we're seeing Loon and Drill. We've seen 6 Loon and Drill before, but Loon and Drill, obviously, a not central meta combination. But then you add in the Wizard, which, I mean, always should break your brain when you see it. Yeah. But you look at some of the way that this does synergize, right? You have good splash damage, you have 3 splash troops, no NATO, which is strange, but you have that Drill, which sure can create offensive pressure, but you look at this deck and you think the one possible weakness would be no traditional building, but that Drill does play on both sides of the board. I wouldn't be surprised to see him play a defensive Drill if we weren't up against Graveyard.
And this is kind of what I'm talking about. The Wizard does get in there a little bit earlier than the Drill, which is unfortunate, but he goes and he pushes with a Balloon, Sliver Wizard push, and a Goblin Drill on tower. And again, just weird sequencing, but it does seem to work out. Another card that's really popular in the meta right now is that Inferno Dragon, man. It's a card that people are having a lot of difficulty getting to. Snowball isn't super popular in the meta right now, but what's not at all is Zap, which we're seeing Bag run as well, which is really helping with that Skarmy. But those things in the meta make it so that, or I guess out of the meta, make it so that Inferno Dragon is firmly in.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a whole lot of a lately nice split lane push here with the Mega Knight to the left-hand side and the Drill Loon push to the right-hand side, so some trouble coming in for Novel, who, keep in mind, though, as long as he can survive and get into triple Elixir, yes, he's had some defensive challenges here, but if you look at the side of Bag, his ability to defend against graveyards is actually pretty rough. Yeah. There's no phenomenal graveyard counter here, and we've seen a couple graveyards already get some good damage, and look how he had to overspend to defend against that.
Yeah, the nice thing about where Bag's at right now is that overspending is going to be something that he's going to be relatively okay with. He's going to always hold his arrows, I think, as kind of a panic button dealing with the graveyard, and then luckily with the 2 splash troops in the Royal Ghost and that Wizard, he can place them far enough apart where the Fireball won't take the Wizard off the board, obviously, and the Snowball won't hit both. MK on the tower with the Wizard behind, and this is what I'm talking about. What is this push? What is this deck, man?
Well, that's exactly the question he's trying to get you to answer, right? As you're playing, you're trying to go, what the heck am I dealing with here? And one of the things I think was interesting about that entire push, and we saw a key moment of it as that Mega Knight crossed, was that there was no really great solution in Novel's deck to deal with the Mega Knight.
Yep.
And so that Valkyrie, which he wants to use against the Goblin Drill, he had to use to control the Mega Knight high. He gets spread really thin, and now he's using less than ideal counters to the cards that he needs to deal with. And then you see the Mega Knight and the Wizard get away, and GG, well played.
Yeah, and it was really great pressure from Bag. He was very happy changing lanes all throughout. And that point that you make about the Valkyrie kind of being the it factor for Novel, he did not have that Valkyrie, and he did not want to keep using his bomb tower out of cycle. And you saw what happened is that sequencing that we're talking about slowly started to unravel. The Valkyrie wasn't where he needed it to be. Then the bomb tower had to be too far to one lane, which means it couldn't distract the Mega Knight, and it also couldn't help with taking the Mega Knight off the board. And then when you talk about using Skarmy, I think it's interesting that both of these players went for maybe somewhat untraditional cards in game one. Bag, it's much more on brand, but for Novel, you know, maybe trying to leave too many things open down the road.
You see me throw my hands in the air,
I know,
Andrew, because
I know.
I'm untraditional, and he comes out with Elixir Pump, which I think I've run into playing Clash Royale 3 times in the last year.
You know, Three Musketeers is coming back just a little bit, but definitely not with Skeleton Dragon's poison surrounding it. You know, Elixir Pump you'll see with sometimes with beatdown decks, but most of the time with 3M. And once again, Bag is going with Elixir Pump Lava Hound. Why not? Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, look, this Lava deck is variation, right, with Guards and Skeleton Dragons for Lava Miner is fairly popular. And he goes, okay, let me make a couple of changes here. And this is kind of what Bag does. Sometimes it's just pure craft from the beginning, and sometimes it's let me take something that you think of and figure out what I can do. And already Novel calling a good game here, as his Lava Hound's going to get absolutely murdered, and there's going to be a massive push behind the Lava of Bag on the right-hand side.
Yeah, you wonder what Novel recognized there in that specific moment. Maybe it was just the way that Bag was able to defend, and there's no way for Novel to actually get on top of those troops. When you look at what he has spell-wise, he only has arrows. And with arrows, what can you do? You can't take out the flying machine, you can't take out the skeletons. The only thing you can actually do is take out the guards, but then you have this Elixir Pump that's just living and loving.
Yep, and no response to the Elixir Pump is absolutely huge. You know, I wonder what kind of read Bag was making there. And look, is Lava Lumber Pump now going to be a deck? Probably not, but it's in Bag's bag, so there you go.
And this is another thing that I wanted to touch on, and I'm really glad to see these two very different decks come out early. It's because this, as we saw last weekend, Rich, and as I saw yesterday with Eric, this is still one of the most favored decks in the meta, the Lava Miner with Guards. But you can see here, Bag maybe even expecting it, giving himself a great matchup because, like we talked about, the only way to get on that pump is with the Miner, and it's really hard to do so with the Guards. And at this point, I think Bag doesn't even care about protecting the pump because it's already game over.
Yeah, I'm actually a little curious about that play at this stage when all you have to do is lock down defense and you're okay, but I think he'll be able to survive through here as he gets the flying machine down, able to control that Inferno Dragon. It does seem like a pump when all you have to do is hold is a little bit risky, but turns out paying off for the American, and he'll go through to our next round.
Yeah, an easy 2-0 there for Bag. I guess maybe the thing that he could have been going for was trying to bait that Miner out, because we all know how tough it can be to actually defend those lava pushes once you get that Miner in late. And whether that is or is not what Novel or Bag was going for, Novel bit hard, and then you saw there Miner not available for any of his true offensive pushes. And what a fascinating 2-0. I mean, someone in the chat yesterday were talking about it's so hard when you play against Bag because you know he's incredible. You know his interactions are top tier, but there's no, you go to Royale API and you look at the decks that he's played over the last month, the last week, the last day, and you're like, what do I prepare for? There's no way.
You look through that and you're like, wait, did he play an Autobot and a Pokemon somehow in here as well? What's going on? It's almost rule breaking, it's meta breaking, and it's super fun to watch. It's why he's a really popular player, and I'm sure the fans of Bag are excited that Bag's plan continues as he moves into round number 2. So a nice clean 2-0 win for Bag. I'm not sure what other matches are going on right now. We'll see maybe if we can jump into game number 3 from one of our other rounds here in a moment. But good start here for one of our 2 American representatives in the competition, Bag, and of course Ian, who we'll maybe see some of him later today. But But I don't know if we can get, while we're waiting to get our next game in, if we can go ahead and get the lineup for today, because we briefly touched on it. But this was really, really good. Okay, so you see Bag moving on. Lucas, probably the most favored player here, number 2 in the world for CRL standings, going on against Eunice. Very talented player out of Turkey, goes down early. Predator and Inthrill, currently Predator up 1-0. Alexi over Molich. Ian, though, down 1-0 to Antonio, so that we could see one of the top players out of the U.S. out early. Jonah, who does have a number 1 finish, I believe, with E-Golem Battle Healer, up 1 on Jorge Luis. And Lucas and Tico going head-to-head. Up the top, it's Toad and Tuvia. So a lot of players from all over. Tuvia out of Israel, Toad out of Germany for a good matchup there. And, of course, Lucas holding the torch right now for Portugal overall. So we'll see if we can get another game in here in just a moment.
Yeah, Tuvia and Toad were 2 players that really stood out to Eric and I yesterday, mainly just because they're not as well known. We kept thinking Toad was maybe someone playing under a different name, but then someone in the chat let us know they just had a 21 finish, or ranked 21 finish globally, and they've apparently just been kind of building a little bit of steam as the past months have been going on. Really exceptional play from both of them, but I think because they were a little bit less known, I think we saw Tuvia going against Diego B once, but I'd love to catch some of their games at some point today just because they played so exceptionally. They beat great players along the way, and they're relative unknowns who seem to be obviously not favorites because Lucas is in here, but they definitely don't seem like underdogs. Whereas you have someone else on this bracket in Inthrill, who, again, man, I got to tell you, I think in the qualifiers now, because we did 6 in week 1 and 7 rounds in week 2, I'm pretty sure he's gone 13-0 in rounds, but has not been able to make it past round 1 of our bracket on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, Inthrill, it's one of those, we've seen this a lot from younger players, right? That they're really great against the mid-tier competition, and they're still learning how to continue that greatness against the upper-tier competition. Yeah. So I think Inthrill, another guy who it looks like has a really bright future. The question is, when does that future begin to actually coalesce into those big moment wins? But hey, it's early today. It's early in this competition. He's stacking up points, and he's in a good position now to maybe make it into those final round playoffs, having made our Sunday 2 weekends in a row.
Yeah, so Tuvia, along his run yesterday, he beat CMG Jonah, he beat SK Noah, and he also beat Diego B. So these are some of the bigger names that we're talking about. That is the real Diego B. Now, whether that was or was not because of connectivity issues, that's not for us to say. He's the guy that is here now. So it looks like they are tied up at 1. We're going to hop into game number 3 in just a moment here between Tuvia and Toad, relative unknowns who have done very, very well here at Royale Masters.
Yeah, Tuvia's been pretty good for a long time. There's a small little core group of players out of Israel who really grind a lot together, and Tuvia is part of that group. And he's done a fairly good job. And of course, getting the number 1 seed here is no joke. So we'll see if he does pretty well and can clinch things up against Toad. And that's one of the cool things we've seen about this year for Clash Royale overall, Andrew, whether it be in CRL, with an event like this with Masters, ESL Mobile Open, all the different Revel Amar tournaments, the Bren Chong Cups, the CWA Cups. There's just so many opportunities for players to work their way into high-level competition. I think we're seeing a faster acceleration of skill in that second tier, and not even call them in second tier in a derogatory way, just more in the not core pro tier. We've seen a faster acceleration in that skill level over the course of this year than we saw in previous years.
100%, man, and it's exactly attributed to what you're talking about, is all these incredible community events, and the fact that because CRL is no longer a teams format, it is individual format, it seems like there was kind of a dam that needed to be broken, or a ceiling that needed to be busted through there for all the amateurs or the semi-pros to get to the same level, or at least be seen in the same scene as the CRL pros. There was such a massive night and day between CRL in 2019, 2018, 2017, and the rest of the world. And now it seems those worlds are starting to get married a bit. And tournaments like Royale Masters with this incredible prize purse gets you the best of the best, which is the only way. You've said it for years, man. Iron sharpens iron. It's the only way that these guys are going to be able to beat the best in the world. So here we go. Toad and Tuvia. Toad, along his run yesterday, was able to take out Coca RX in his last matchup of the day, playing for his life. And Coca did really, really well. Coca had some great plays. He fell to Toad and to Bag, though, which is why he's not here today.
Looking like 2 different variations of Hog EQ for game number 3. A soft running, a variation that I believe Ian, who's also in this competition, tends to favor Hog EQ with the Musketeer rather than the Firecracker, and Toad going more common with the Firecracker variant.
Yeah, Hog EQ really, really popular yesterday. We did see Royal Hogs EQ, I think, a couple of times. Bag had a very interesting version, and the other one I believe we saw was basically just this Hog deck, but with Royal Hogs instead of the traditional Hog Rider, which at the end of the day ended up not being quite as effective because the Hog demands a little bit more of a response, and obviously not what we're seeing here. These matchups are always really interesting, especially because when you look at this building difference, Rich, and hopefully for Toad, that last card is an Earthquake.
Yeah, I'm also just want to confirm here. I'm going to go look at him right now, but I don't know if Asaf is Tuvia's main account. I think they are the same person here, so just double checking on that one right now myself.
Yeah, I was... and we are getting confirmation that is true, but just it's always fascinating when players have all these different accounts and different names and trying to keep up with all of them.
Okay, so we're getting confirmation that Tuvia is his Battlefy name. So now that I know this is Asaf, Asaf is a legit gangster, 8.9k player. I mean, he ended up only 3 or 4 wins away from being one of the first, from potentially being the first player to break 9k. He was in the lead and ladder last season for a while. Asaf can certainly ball. The question here is whether or not he's going to get past Toad in this final matchup of this first round.
Crazy. I guess we maybe did not spectate any of their games yesterday, or else we would have seen the name difference. A lot of CMG players, man. Chazmac has picked up a lot of really, really great talent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very curious about how he's putting together one of the most insane lineups in the history of Clash Royale. And, you know, maybe I'll get him to spill the beans one of these days, but so far CMG certainly the leader in getting great Clash Royale talent in 2021.
And this is already trouble for Asaf. You saw there the log misses the hog just jumps right over it, which kind of messes up the sequencing, and it's also a waste of elixir. And anytime you're in this kind of similar matchup, if Hog, Earthquake, and a building are in both of your decks and you're this far behind, you're basically, there's no way to come back. Because the only way that Asaf comes back here is if Toad just completely misses a pull on the Hog with his building and then doesn't snowball on top of it, which is just not going to happen.
Yeah. I'm wondering, and I'm trying to go back and look at what Asaf's decks were in games number 1 and 2 and why he's running Inferno Tower, whether it was a decision he made based on expectation of matchup or a lack of the Tesla, but you know, you're in a Hog EQ matchup. Tesla can dodge EQs much better than an Inferno Tower.
Yeah, and I think maybe what Asaf is going for here is just opening himself up down the road, but I mean, you know, it's already game 3, so maybe it's what he used along the way. It just feels crazy to me that he would not have had just a different building than Inferno, as Inferno just isn't super strong in the meta right now.
Well, looking at the previous 2 games, game number 1, Asaf ran Lava Miner Guards, and Toad ran RG, and Toad won that game number 1. Game number 2, Toad ran Lava, and Asaf ran Miner Wall Breakers with Tesla. So Tesla not available for Asaf after game 2, but 2 beatdown decks in a row. Maybe he was making the read here that he thought his opponent was going to go heavy one more time. Yeah,
I would have loved to see out of him just maybe a bomb tower, but obviously easier up here at the desk. Hog Rider running towards the Inferno that falls off the board. A lot of defense comes in, but it's not going to be enough. And Toad going to eliminate Asaf, and this is what Toad has been doing. High-pressure situations and just really great gameplay. You know, there was nothing flashy about what he did there. He just did everything correct.
Did everything really, really nicely, and again, like that matchup, real challenge there for Asaf. Toad with a really good read, going beat down twice, and then rather than going heavy one more time, switching to one of the best outplay decks in all of Clash Royale, and that Tesla versus Inferno Tower. You know, you're both affecting the cycle there and affecting your ability to dodge EQs. A very, very nice win there for Toad, and 16 moving past the number 1 seed for our first match, or for our second match today on our Championship Sunday. Big win for the young man.
Yeah, it is really tough to dodge those earthquakes when you're with those buildings, right? If you don't have Tesla, if you don't have those smaller buildings that you can place right next to your tower or up high at the river or even up high in the center or centered, then there's no guessing game for your opponent. It really just becomes them, all right, I'm going to send it a Hog, I'm going to Earthquake in this general area, and you're going to lose. So yeah, really great plays there from Toad. So we'll be seeing Toad versus Bag. That should be a great matchup. So far, looking here at the bracket, Inthril did make it past round 1 over Predator. Pulls off the reverse sweep. I think he was down 1. So it'll be Lucas versus Inthril in round number 2. That's a super fun matchup. I actually love to watch that one. Tico and Lucas GSM still going at it. Tico up 1. And then here at the center of our bracket. 2 matches that are just all tied up at 1. Alexia and Malik, and then Ian and Antonio.
Yeah, Lucas and Tico, that's a pretty serious matchup as well. Tico, really talented young player out of Brazil, and shared language there with Lucas, who was a part of that core, that Portuguese team that pushed fairly far. I think they made top 8 in the no-tilt worlds back in 2019 or 2020. I can't remember which one. I think it was 2020. So shared language, but very different in terms of play style and experience with the rookie and the longtime veteran. But and one of those two will face off against Jonah. So we have a #1 finisher there in our round 2 as well. So that could also be a fun direction to look.
Yeah, Lucas GSM was a guy that I actually had a lot of fun watching back in GameStars. He was a super calculated player, like you said. He likes to kind of vary up the way that he plays. It was also in a very interesting meta when we were casting GameStars, so I'm curious to see how he's going to be approaching the competition today. You know, we saw him go kind of, I don't want to say heavier and beatdown, but he did go for more mid-range deck or mid-costing decks. He didn't do anything super fast, high cycle, anything like minor control, or just like really quick cycle decks like 2.6 or Expo, but we don't really see those much in competition. He went for stuff that was probably in the mid-3s, so I'll be curious to see what he plays with today, as it's been a while since I've seen him compete.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Lucas in a while as well, but again, you talk about those tight communities for working. Vitor, of course, also out of Portugal. Jibas out of Portugal. Lots of talented players out of Portugal, and that's a program, that's a country that's always been relatively insular for their Clash Royale. You know, we talked about it in the past where they didn't really have the same international impact because the Portuguese always kind of played amongst themselves. And then you had breakout players like Vitor, who made a splash on the CRL scene, players who got into no-tilt, both no-tilt league and no-tilt worlds, and they had a pretty good run. So Lucas playing with some pretty good guys, and playing with some guys who definitely can help him elevate his game a lot. So we'll see again if we're able to finish that out. And it is Lucas versus Inthrill. I think we're going to go ahead and I think we're going to jump into that match here in just a moment.
Yeah, looking at Lucas GSM yesterday, he was able to take down Bag 2-0. He was able to take down Majran, who you guys probably recognize from being on Ladder, 2-0. And he was able to take down RB Potato, who you guys maybe don't know, but was playing very well yesterday. So Lucas GSM, he was 7-0 on the day. No one was able to take him down, including some of the people that we're seeing here. Bag and Toad and Wallace and Coca RX were all in his respective group, and he was the only player to come out of it without dropping 1 set. So be excited to see what
really
he does.
Impressive.
Yeah.
That's really impressive, and of course, still has to finish getting through to that next round. So see if it's able to happen. It's Lucas versus Inthrill. Hopefully, I think we're getting that game up here in just a moment. We still have some round 1 matchups to finish, so we'll have them on here in just a couple of minutes. I see from the chat people from all over the world. I see Kong, hello from Paris. Owen here from the U.S. Zayev, Uvir Zayev from Turkey. Someone from Russia here. So people from all over. I see from Argentina, from Zurich.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hey, how are you?
And then I saw something up here. I think it was, where is it? Elixir or something? Elixir 6. They were saying, Rich and Andrew aren't picking the games. It's not up to them. It's well, we gotta pick the first one because, you know, before we're waiting for the broadcast to start, we were going through looking. We're like, you know what? I bet you Bag's gonna bring something fun out to play. So we have a slight, let's say, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't even think of the word. We can influence what the next game might be, but we're definitely not picking them 100%. And I am very excited, though, to watch this between Lucas and Inthrill. Inthrill's a guy that is so crazy because, like I said, he's gone 13-0 in sets, and I don't think we've actually watched him play once over the last couple weeks, so I would be really excited to see what he does against the best in the world. And talking about the best in the world, we had a great player in the chat yesterday. I think their name was Problematic, and they were talking about how they were 3-0, and then they were 4-0, and then they ran into Lucas, and then Lucas hard countered them twice and just completely destroyed them, ended their run. And he was talking about how the best players in the world, he knew it wasn't an accident. Lucas clearly went and looked at his Royale API and looked at the decks that he'd been playing over the last couple days, and he made no mistake in making his decks. And that's something that you're going to have to do. That's something that Inthrill is going to have to do if he wants to get an edge over, like you said, Rich, the #2 player in the world.
Yeah, and that edge against Lucas is difficult. Obviously, the level of analysis going into the top-tier players, like Lucas, as you mentioned, is getting higher and higher. And then on top of that, you add in the skill set.
Yep.
Right? So, especially if you're playing against a guy who's that tight in their micro and has such good understanding of the macro, the place you win that is an analysis, but of course those top players are making that more and more difficult. It seems every single month they're making it more and more difficult. So I think there is even a bigger challenge with that in this format, right? I think that because the way that this variation of dual format works, you don't really... I guess maybe you do get an advantage when you go down a game, but game number 3 is a lot harder to pick what you might be up against in game number 3 than we have seen in game number 2, which is almost why, like I said earlier before, I think that this version of duels might actually sing even better in a BO5 format, because you're able to make those more tight decisions after your opponent has burned cards than after having just burned 8.
And the other tough thing about kind of strategizing against players like Lucas, like Muhammad Light, like Ruben, is they are so good with all of the decks. You know, you talk about Lucas being one of the best Hog cycle players in the world. Well, he's also one of the best Exo players in the world. He's also one of the best RG players currently in the world. And you have to be able to do that, which again makes it very difficult to strategize against them, because not only does the meta constantly shift, not only do they know how to play all these other decks, but they're also masters of all of them. Whereas these younger players, they're still coming off of maybe becoming ladder all-stars and then learning about the competitive play and trying to figure out, all right, so these are like my 3 comfort decks in competition. Or maybe they were trying to figure out the CRL dual mode, which opens up a lot of doors in this format. And it sounds like we're having just a couple issues here with Battlefy. No surprise, we've been using Battlefy this entire year. But we do have round 1 locked up, Rich. EA Toad going up against Bag in round number 2. Tico going up against Jonah. Ian was able to take down Antonio, and Alexi was able to take down Moloch. So it'll be Ian and Alexi in that 3rd spot on the bracket. And then, as we've been talking about, Lucas and Inthrill in that final spot. So we are already down to 8 as we say goodbye to Tuvia, Novel, Lucas, GSM, surprise are there, Jorge Luis, Antonio, Moloch, Predator, and Eunice. All very well played, but we'll see you next week.
That's the hard part about single elimination, Andrew, is you come out and you're all ready for your day, and then 2 matches, but 2 games, and you could be absolutely done. So that can be frustrating. I don't know if we can get the bracket on screen here while we're waiting for our next game. You just broke it down, but it might be helpful for everyone to see that. Let's start at the top match of the bracket. That's going to be Toad versus Bag. So if you're watching the chat right now, go ahead and tell us who you think's going to win that one, Toad or Bag. After seeing the way Toad picked and played in that first round, it's hard not to believe in Toad from an ability standpoint. But again, picked and played is the important terminology there, Andrew, up against Bag. You've watched Toad more than I have. Any thoughts on this first matchup?
So my thoughts on this first match, it's really tough to bet against Bag because he is such a fun guy to play. He's such a respected player, and he's really, really dang good. But I think one of the things that we saw yesterday, especially in that best of 3 with Coca RX, was that when Coca ran a super on-meta strong deck, which was, I believe, was the one that he played first, was the RG Fisherman, Mother Witch, Fireball, yada, 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 yada. We all know the deck. We've all played against it 100 times. It's so strong in the meta right now, and it's so firmly, in the top 3 decks that are winning. When he ran into decks like that are constructed, that have perfect synergy, great defensive options, that can create a ton of pressure with different cards, he did struggle a little bit. So I'm wondering if Toad just goes with his 2 comfort decks or his 3 comfort decks if we make it to 3 games, and they're all different, and he's able to beat Bag, who likes to just change things up a bit. Because like we were talking about in game 1, even though it was fun to watch him put it on Novel, that deck is so weird, and it definitely doesn't have the synergy out there of some other decks, or else more players would be using it. So I personally am going to go with Toad in this because his interactions have been on lock, and I know he's going to play more firmly in the meta.
And one thing that we saw, I think it was hard for Tuvia / Asaf to put him on decks there in game number 3, and that might be a little more of a challenge here for Bag. Looking at the chat right now, more chat picking Toad than Bag for that first matchup. I think it ended up being 6-4. I'm going to go ahead and add a 5 to that one, and we'll end up being a 7-5 vote. I'm going to vote Bag on this one, and we'll see what kind of match he can come up with. Our second match of the day is Jonah, who, of course, does have a #1 finish with the Eagle and Battle Healer on ladder, up against Tico. Yeah, I know. The Sticky Cheese finish, #1 for Jonah, up against the young rookie out of Brazil in Tico. And Jonah's been playing really, really nice. I feel like Tico needs that one big moment. Jonah, to me, might be coming in a bit more confident here. I'm going to pick Jonah in our second match.
Yeah, I think I have to go with you on this one, man. It's really hard to kind of bet against a lot of players from CMG. CMG, like you were talking about, has just put together this incredible roster of really, really talented players. Tico, although he did 2-0 Lucas GSM, which is a very, very tall order, for some reason, I'm just feeling Jonah. I'm going with you here in game number 2.
So I see a couple picks for Jonah in the chat as well, so you guys can go ahead and get those votes in for that one. I see a lot of votes for Jonah actually to come in now. Our third match of our quarterfinals here, Ian up against Alexi, and Alexi's had some good moments here, but Ian definitely feels like the more proven commodity of these two, assuming he can get his decks picked in time.
Yeah, I saw that incredible BO3 that we ended the day on yesterday. The second game, I believe, was, Eric and I both said, the best game of the day between him and Lucas X Gamer. And I have to go back to CMG. Ian is a part of their squad. And what I saw out of him yesterday, interaction-wise, he had a rough matchup. He lost only by 80 HP. That guy won me over.
All right, here we go with Bag versus Toad for our quarterfinal matchup. And we're seeing Mother Witch on both sides. Fireball for Toad against the Mother Witch early. We'll see if Bag is going a more traditional direction here, or if he has a pump and maybe a Lava Hound in here for some reason.
Yeah, and bottom of your screen here looks like Toad is going to go to Royal Giant. We'll see if that is 100%. First thing that I'm seeing right here when looking at these cards is I don't see a lot of single target DPS coming from Bag to where that RG could end up being trouble down the road. And then when you talk about the Furnace not a great response, defensive response building wise, but it's Bag. He could do it.
The interesting thing here is if this is RG, Toad's shown us he's running Fireball as opposed to running Lightning. And, you know, that's going to be a little bit harder, not impossible, but harder to get that Furnace off the board in a way that's fast. So I don't love that Bag has the bar barrel rather than the log in this particular matchup, but it's going to be interesting to see if he can actually set that line high enough and get the damage on it fast enough with the Fireball as opposed to the Lightning for Toad.
And with the Lightning here from Bag, I'm curious what he's running. You know, you think about Lightning, it's usually paired with, you know, E-Giant, or, you know, sometimes you'll see it with Ram Rider. Every now and then you will see it with Royal Giant as well. So a lot of options here for Bag. When you talk synergistically, it really does feel like RG is still the best way to go, but I just don't know what he's got, and it's Bag, so no one does.
RG Furnace with Lightning's making a bit of a comeback. I ran into it. Yeah. I ran into the Lumberjack version, the old school version of it, twice in the last week, so it's certainly out and about, and it's gold.
And it's gold, yeah. And we talked about, yeah, it's Bag, exactly. We talked about that yesterday, man. We saw the same thing. We were talking about how it felt like we went back to 2017, 2018 with the RG, Furnace, Lumberjack combo that was busted out, and I think it actually ended up faring okay yesterday. So here we go. Golem, Furnace, Mother Witch, Prince, and this is one thing, I think the one thing that you can maybe say about Bag is he clearly loves the Prince. He used it more than anyone else in the competition. He used it a few times yesterday, and right now already creating a big offensive presence.
That was a brilliant, brilliant offensive sequence put together by Bag, and I don't know if we have the ability to go back during break, but man, that's the way he got the bar barrel in front, was able to distract the Fish Boy long enough. Prince came behind, Lightning to clean off the Fisherman. It was just nice from top to bottom, and a fairly simple win put together, and all he had to do was shut down one RG push and come out big and ahead.
I think what's so fun about watching Bag play is by the time that you're figuring out what he's running, it's almost too late, because he does seem to really like running heavier decks. So it's usually not even until Double Elixir that his opponent has even figured out what they've got, right? Like in this matchup specifically, we saw that Royal Giant didn't come out from Toad till after the Golem already came out, because he still didn't know what he was running. You and I were still trying to figure it out, but he's already in Double Elixir. He's already just spent his Royal Giant on offense, which means this downhill push from the Golem, this massively expensive push, Bag's able to just double and triple down on, like you talk about, with that bar barrel. And Golem decks with cannon carts, E-Barbs, or Princes behind the Golem, they are so difficult to deal with, man.
Yeah, so brutal to deal with. And, you know, one of the interesting things about that, we talked about, like, how is Bag going to deal with the Royal Giant when it comes across? You saw the Furnace played high and really into that lane, right? Not just played over to that high, but over there, right on that Royal Giant. Bandit there as well. And then that Bandit required some attention from Toad onto that left-hand lane, meant he didn't have the elixir he wanted. He was already behind on elixir, didn't have elixir enough to deal with the RG push, or with the golem push, and then here we go. You want to talk about the weird bag stuff? There's a giant being played.
Yeah, and yesterday we saw Bag, or at least I think when we looked through his games, we saw Bag running some odd giant graveyard deck. Obviously not the one that we see more of on ladder, which I think is like giant Night Witch, Skarmy graveyard. So maybe we could be seeing that out of Bag, and running Fish Boy with Giant and Mini P.E.K.K.A. Why not? This is so fun to watch.
And look at the way he did get the Giant down in front of the Mini P.E.K.K.A. This is a lot for Toad to deal with. I don't know what he probably is running Fireball here, which is not going to be super ideal to shut this one down. Log, though, does get the knockback. But again, the Giant's still on the board. I think it gets one, maybe two hits here, just gets one. And the slight elixir lead for Toad, but he's going to be able to underspend on Bag's side and get this done. And there you go. There's the underspend.
And when you look at what Bag has in response to the Royal Giant coming back out for Toad, he has so many great single target responses. He's got the Fish Boy to pull, he's got the Log, he's got the Ewiz to stun and reset. There's a lot of really good stuff going on here for Bag. It's just going to be all about being able to get on tower over and over. And while you might think it's Graveyard, it's Bag, so who knows?
Yeah, and Poison obviously not the ideal response to the Mother Witch necessarily, but you'll see the Mother Witch does stop and stay. And the nice thing about this matchup for Bag here, maybe he was predicting the run back, because Mother Witch doesn't have a really excellent target in Bag's deck, right? So if you've been playing Graveyard, this could have been rough for Toad, but or could have been rough for Bag, but here, not really a great use for that Mother Witch other than defeat poisons.
Yeah, and Bag super happy to just keep getting that poison value in. You see there getting on top of the Brawler, on top of the Fish Boy. Fish Boy pulls the Giant in to create a little more offensive pressure. And once again, talk about these defensive responses from Bag. The Ewiz to stun, all these high DPS single target hits, and of course the Hunter there, which is just a little bit of high target or a high DPS splash damage.
And you see Toad right now is cycling all his Royal Ghosts in the back, trying to just set up to create pressure. It's interesting he's going into the same lane here rather than trying to create opposite lane pressure, because so far, Bag has been winning the same lane battle over and over again. We'll see if he ends up going back to the split lane or to the opposite lane pressure with that Royal Ghost.
And I'm curious, too, when you look at how cheap Bag's deck is to cycle around if he wants to with the Fish Boy, the E-Spirit, the Log, getting those Giants down. I'd like to see 2 Giants come down for Bag at some point. I'm sure he's working towards that.
And here we go. A nice little lead does open up for Toad. The German now ahead 1368 to 1883 as we are about 25 seconds or so into our sudden death period.
This Mega Minion for Toad is kind of a bit of a lifesaver for him. He's getting a lot of good single target DPS in that's kind of hard for Bag to get directly on top of. You don't really want to hold that Hunter or drop that Hunter up high right on top. But the Mega Minion getting cycled in the back over and over for Toad is just adding some nice damage where and when he needs it.
That was a good log here for Toad, and now that Royal Ghost looking to escape. No pull on the Royal Ghost. That's to be a decent bit of damage there and forcing out that Mini P.E.K.K.A. on the left-hand side. We might see Toad go Royal Giant to the right here. No, the Mini P.E.K.K.A. then with the pressure for the Giant. He has to hold off.
Yeah, Mini P.E.K.K.A. actually ended up doing some good work there. Now goes coast to coast. We'll get one swing on that tower. Get some free pancakes going for everyone watching. 1752 and 1627 to 1368 as the lowest tower on the board here for Bag. Only 45 seconds left, man. He's got to create some sort of offense.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is one of those ones where it's felt like Bag is winning a lot of the time, but Toad has just sneakily put in damage. And we talked earlier about the Mother Witch not having a great target. Hasn't really mattered. The Mother Witch has turned out 1 or 2 piggies every time, and those have been really impactful.
And this is one of the things that becomes difficult with Bag's playstyle is this deck, again, fun to play, little weird, little different, doesn't have a building, isn't able to mitigate 100% of that RG damage on the left-hand side, and the most important thing is that he doesn't have a way to get direct damage on tower other than just his poison. So you see here, he's going to lose this by just a hair as Toad sends that Fireball in on that right-hand side.
Oh, it almost felt like that poison log might have been close, but not enough time to tick away, and that's going to be 83 HP for the win for Toad. We're going to game number 3 in this matchup, and yeah, Andrew, you talk about, you know, the idea of is Giant a win condition? Maybe, not really. That's why you see Giant Miner Double Prince, or you see Giant Graveyard, even some weirdos out there playing Giant Loon. but Giant by itself just doesn't get it done. I think the meta right now, with all the cards that can stun, drag, obfuscate, throw up blinding powder, whatever it is, a Giant getting on tower, we saw that Giant hit tower once, I think. One Giant punch. It's not going to do it, and this deck just didn't have the tools and the pieces to really put any damage on that tower.
Yeah, when you look at the deck, I think the most interesting thing about it is that you have the Electro Spirit and the E-Wiz, and I think maybe one of those cards could have been played for something else. Maybe something with just a little bit more direct damage to tower, or maybe something like a Miner just to get something behind to help tank in case your Fisherman sneaks by with a sliver of HP, or in case your P.E.K.K.A. does, or even just because you recognize the Giants aren't going to get through and you just want to Miner poison your way out. There was just something about this deck to where it had too many utility and just not enough winning. You know what I'm talking about? There was just too many options to play defense in certain ways, but it didn't actually play defense the way you wanted. And there was a lot of ways to create offense, but you were never actually able to get on tower.
And it really felt like the mini P.E.K.K.A. was going to be more impactful for Bag overall throughout that. But a good job of not letting it run rampant and creating sequences out of Toad that minutes of the mini P.E.K.K.A. couldn't be played exactly. He would have loved to just be like Fisherman mini P.E.K.K.A. Like pull, cut, pull, cut. He couldn't get that going much beyond that first time we saw defense happen, and it was a rough one. And I see Serenity Brawls in the Twitch chat saying, I thought for sure Bag's last card would have been a second win condition. And I think a lot of people thought that, and maybe that was some of the hesitance from Toad early on, going, okay, well, what's going to come behind that? Yeah. And nothing ended up coming behind that, and there you go, GG, well played. We're going on to game number 3. Yeah,
it became a really easy kind of position for Toad to be in. He was just like, all right, I can figure out how to lock this down, take maybe a little bit of damage, take the poison damage, but I can always end up getting an edge here when I do go on offense. And when you look at what Toad ran in those first 2 games, they were basically the same deck, slight twists, slight turns. You know, the Mother Witch was in both, but in the first deck, you did not have, let me take a look here. We didn't have Goblin Cage in that second deck. What he did have was the other options in Skeletons. He didn't have Skeletons in the first deck, so he went for a little bit of a cheaper cycle, but he still leaned heavily on what's firmly in the meta, which is RG, Fisherman, Fireball, Mother Witch. So now we're going to see what he goes to in game number 3, and he's already going a lot faster here.
Yeah, Flying Machine, and I think this is Flying Machine with Fireball out, right? So that's going to be a great call from Bag. We'll see how much he can abuse that one in this matchup.
Yeah, and that you have to do. I mean, there's a handful of cards that just must be played when Fireball is not available. Mother Witch, Flying Machine, Royal Hogs, they're all options. And Flying Machine is definitely really deadly these days.
An interesting double bait variation from Toad running the Wall Breakers and Goblin Barrel. Log's going to be helpful there. Log E-Spirit, you put those two together, that's going to be a real difficult out for Toad.
Yeah, when you look at what Bag has to defend, the Log's going to obviously be great to clean up that barrel, but then he's going to deal with some pile-ups of like Bandit plus, probably Bandit plus Wall Breakers behind, or Bandit plus Goblin Barrel in, and we'll see how he deals with that and what his big spell is.
And here we go. It's Royal Giant with Flying Machine and Skeleton Dragons. So, you know, one of the things that Bag does pretty well, and we talk about all of his crazy deck stuff, is he builds decks that look like they are going a specific direction.
Yeah.
And he kind of like, he mixes and matches different looks and puts those together. So this looks primarily, this looks like a Royal Hogs deck, ends up being RG in the end.
Yeah, and already looking at what Toad has to defend, he doesn't have a lot of great options to deal with that RG unless his last card is a building. Pretty doubtful, though. So what he's going to have to do is just really get great at cycling these cannon carts in whatever lane he thinks Bag's going to work towards, which is this right-hand side.
And Elite Barbarians on top of all that. Flying Machine will take care of the Magic Archer. Snowball not going to do much. And has to use Wall Breakers for a kite here rather than put in any offense, and that Flying Machine finally connects.
Yeah, that's not what he wanted to do there. The Flying Machine just gets right on tower. Easy money there. He has to spend this Bandit and those Skeletons, so he's down an Elixir. Now this is going to get pulled away with the Fish Boy. There it is. Hunter will do nice cleanup, but that's basically already towered down, man.
That's really, really brutal. And you know, RG E-Barbs feeling like 2018 here for a minute, but in this dual mode format, when you can find out how to abuse it, you do, and that's a nice one. Good prediction, Snowball, though, out of Toad to get the connection. Yeah, really nice stuff there. Still 1836 remains on that left-hand tower with 30 seconds left to play. This is really Bag's game to lose at this point. It's going to be very, very difficult for Toad to get a lot of good damage on tower. He's not going to get it from the barrels, and he's going to have to always do predictive plays to get Wall Breakers on. So here we go. Once again, just piling up to get that RG off the board. Hunter not going to stay there, and now that's 2 flying machines on their own side to work on the cannon cart. Cannon cart doesn't quite connect either way, so now just loading things up on the right-hand side is Bag. Magic Archer trying to work here, but Magic Archer will go down. You can't stop those flying machines. Certainly can't stop a log. That's GG, well played. Bag moving on to our semifinals.
You kind of love to see when pros do that. It's one of my favorite things in the game is when pros pile up at the bridge something that seems so precarious, right? And obviously for Bag, he knew that Fireball wasn't in cycle, but anytime you see 2 flying machines crossing the river and 2 skeleton dragons, there's just like this innate thing inside of you as a Clash Royale player where you're like, this doesn't feel right. I should not have that much Fireball value in one place. Obviously not going to be a problem, though, with what was out of play for his opponent. You see that pile up, and like you said, man, no way to stop it.
No way to stop it, indeed. And Bag, one of his 78 accounts, now making it through to the next round. I mentioned that because I'm looking at Bag. I was trying to figure out
duffel bag, hiking backpack. There's so many of them.
Regular Bag,
Yeah.
Bag with different symbols on the outsides. YouTube_Bag, Satchel.
Yes.
Man, there's Satchel. So plenty of those. That extra character from American Beauty, right? There's a ton of different ways that Bag can name his decks.
Wow.
And, of course.
Sorry to cut you off, man. Inthrill 2-1s Lucas in our quarterfinals, and Inthrill is moving on, getting that win that he was looking for, that prestige top-of-the-line win to move on to our semis. Ian and Alexi still going at it. Tico and Jonah still going at it, but Bag moving on past Toad, and Inthrill moving on past Lucas. We are going to take a very, very short break. We'll be back in just a couple minutes with more Clash Royale action coming your way.
I see something, it's coming up on the horizon. Oh, let me clear my head and get rid of the distractions. Oh, I was down when I saw you in the clouds. Out of space, filled with doubt. I was drifting in and out, levitate, fade away. I had left full time and space, but you just caught my eye. Hey, nah, please won't you come over? Let me get to know ya. Hey, nah, delve into emotion. Leave us in this moment. Let your mind be free. Stop holding back, 'cause you can fight it. Oh, I don't know your name, but something in me has ignited. Oh, I was down when I saw you in the clouds. Out of phase, filled with doubt. I was drifting in and out, levitate, fade away. I had left full time and space, but you just caught my eye. Hey, nah, please won't you come over? Let me get to know ya. Hey, nah, delve into emotion. Leave us in this moment.
And welcome back to the quarterfinals here at Royale Masters, where we are 2 rounds down. And a bit of apologies, I know a lot of you wanted to see Lucas versus Inthrill. That match accidentally started earlier than it was supposed to, and it was supposed to be our 4th match of the quarterfinals. Ended up being played at the same time as Toad versus Bag. But, of course, you'll see lots more Lucas because he will be in our CRL World Finals come December. So if you're a big Lucas fan, don't worry, you will get plenty of Lucas. But for today, it is Inthrill who moves on to round number 3 to our semifinals, where he will await the winner of Ian versus Alexi, and of course Bag there after his big quarterfinal victory over Toad will await the winner of Tico and Jonah.
And you know, for those Lucas fans out there, he was in last week's competition at Royale Masters. He'll probably be here next week as well, so there's been a lot of him to see, and like Rich just said, there is a ton of Lucas out there in the world to watch, and we'll see a lot more of him as the CRL year winds down. But I believe we're going to be going to his teammates matchup here in just a moment between CMG Jonah and Tico. Tico had some great matches yesterday. He was able to take down Diego B. He took down Novel Posu, who we saw earlier there, and could just kind of go through here and look at some of the other matchups he had. He was 6-1 on the day. So again, here in our first week of competition, back here again on Sunday in our week 2, and a very exceptional player that, you know, just another one of those guys who you've heard in the space for a long time, and he's just trying to get to that first place finish here at Masters.
Yeah, Tico's been, again, like just on the edge of being to that next tier for quite a while. We've seen him come through in CRL fairly well. Some pretty good performances, making it to the top, making it to the 6th place in our June competition. Tico is definitely a guy whose stock is on the rise, and of course a great performance here at Royale Masters wouldn't hurt that at all.
So here we go. Tico, the Brazilian player that we were just talking about. Yeah, I remember him at CRL. 5th, 6th spot.
Yeah, he has a shot. That last chance, that LCQ, which is going to be crazy. He has a shot there, so we'll see what he can pull off.
So just kind of a stop and stare here by both guys, letting their units just work their way down the board. Hunter showing up more and more as of late. Hunter, I think, is still one of the most fascinating cards in the game. It's so strong, but can be so useless. So I think when you talk about cards and their placement, Hunter's placement is almost more important than any other card in the game, especially when you're talking defensively.
And Hunter has a lot of interesting placements, right? I mean, we talked about those high ones you have to do sometimes that end up backfiring against you. But Hunter does also have a graveyard placement.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about that inside low corner. Hunter is oddly more versatile than some people might think. And as you said, also, one of those cards where for 4 elixir, sometimes those placements can put you in a lot of trouble.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. So this mortar going to get taken off the board. Nice prediction there on the spears that were coming down. Wouldn't have been necessary to snowball on top. I don't think the last shot would have came in. So great call there, getting the spear goblins off the board by Tico.
Cannon cart to the right-hand side as the first minute and 45 seconds passes. Double elixir coming our way in just a couple of moments here, as it is a very, very slight lead for Jonah.
It's so crazy to think that triple elixir just wasn't a thing back in the day. I was just thinking about that the other day, and how like integral it feels like as a part of the game now in the final minute. God, you love it. You love to see those things change.
Well, you know, I think that it's one of those things where we talk about we talk a lot about the overreaction of players to a balance change, right? Mm-hmm. Where, hey, this card now is a little bit worse, so now I think this card is dead, for example. And that triple elixir change is one of those ones, and that Fireball plus Mega Knight going to be nice here for Tico and a Hogs matchup. That triple elixir was a change that was kind of that made all players upset. They thought, oh, this is a cheese game mode that they're adding into the actual game. It's going to really favor beatdown. Well, as we've seen this last year, it still seems like Cycle is relatively dominant overall in the game. It hasn't changed it that much, and what it has done, being 5 minutes instead of 6, plus tiebreakers, plus that triple elixir, it's made the game absolutely insane in that final minute.
Speaking of insane, Tico is just getting incredibly overwhelmed right now. Mortar locked onto tower, Musketeer locked onto tower, Cannon Cart coming out late, Spear Goblins are there, Mortar still locked on tower by Jonah there, and that's already game over when you talk about Earthquake Cycle. He just needs to get around twice, and that was a beautiful sequence there from Jonah, just picking apart the defense there of Tico, who, like you said, Rich, I was in the same boat, man. He looked like he was in a really good spot with the cage, with the snowball, with the fisherman, all the things. The MK, seemed like Royal Hogs weren't going to be a problem, but what was that mortar.
Yeah. When you don't have your sequence, that's going to be a GG right there.
Yep.
Might need the EQ to finish it. Pigs sneak right on past the the MK. It looked part of it like I think Tico got just out of sorts from a cycle perspective and didn't have a great way to control Mortar that he liked, and he just kind of got caught.
Yeah, I think that's one of the nice things about what Jonah did there is, that exactly what you're talking about in the response to Mortar. Mortar is one of the easiest buildings to distract, but when you talk about only having those close-range troops, having very few long-range troops, there's really not a great way to keep it at bay, especially when one of those things to distract the Mortar is your Goblin Cage, because you're going to have to drop something else to distract the Mortar and then something else to get on top of it damage-wise. So really, really great recognition there by Jonah going, okay, Piggies might not be the way to win this game. Let's try it with the other win condition.
Yeah, and so you think about that, right? Like, we're looking at what Jonah already played, getting rid of the Royal Hogs, getting rid of the Mortar, and that's really interesting, right? Because you see these cards in Mega Knight and Fireball that Tico still has, and the one deck that you're like, hey, I'd love to have these against that deck, Royal Hogs, he already lost against that one. So Jonah might go back to, or Tico might go back to Fireball almost assuredly. Yeah. Mega Knight maybe, but then what matchup are you looking for at that point?
Yeah, on the other side of it, when you look at what Jonah's used already, Hogs out of play, Mortar out of play, Earthquake out of play, for me, it feels like he might go to Graveyard. Graveyard's been pretty strong. Not a lot of players running Poison. We've seen those cheaper Graveyard decks have some good effect here at Royale Masters. And then the other one, or good success, I should say, I think the other one is maybe he goes Lava Miner? Just maybe, just because it is so strong right now. I don't think it actually matches up as well as Graveyard might, but a lot of options out there, few of them taken away.
Yeah, I mean, so Jonah having played EQ, Deliveries out, those are the two spells, and he's not worried about not having EQ because there's not a lot of matchups that you need Earthquake for, right? But there's a ton that you need Fireball and or Poison for. So I think this is a really big win for Jonah here in game number 1 in terms of what you've got rid of the deck pool, right? EQ, not worried about it. Delivery is nice, but you have other good options. And Musketeer, 3 cards that I don't think really interfere with a ton of the rest of his deck pool here. This is a big win for a lot of reasons for Jonah in game number 1.
I think what would be fascinating to see out of Tico is, and I hate to say it out loud because we saw it a few times yesterday, and Eric was talking about how he loves it, but the double spawner decks, man, they're everywhere. They're good. And I hate them. I hate them more than the Stinky Cheese deck. It's my least favorite thing to play against. But when you talk about matchup conversation, there's no Earthquake in play. And really, whether you have Fireball, whether you have Poison, there's still tough matchups because there's always one of the buildings on board, and you always have to spend some elixir to either distract or take those units off of the board. I would love to see a double spawner here from Tico. I can't believe I just said that out loud.
I'm about to say, like, I think maybe you should say I might see it, or it'd be a good call. I love to see it. That's some strong language there.
Oh, and now it's on the internet forever.
Yeah. Someone clip that and then make it into Andrew's second meme that we'll put out there all over the internet. I played against Expo double spawner today. So Expo's double spawner Tesla, I won. Yeah, it was real gross. But it's we'll see if that's the direction that he goes. Tico still has tons of options, right? That's the weird thing for Jonah here is that Tico's got nothing limited for him. The hard part here is it looked like he liked playing Graveyard and wants to play Graveyard. But now when you look at what Jonah has left, the one thing I don't want Tico to do is go back to Graveyard. Yeah. Because it feels like Jonah's going to go with something that has at least more than one Graveyard counter in it. We'll see. Here we go. No more waiting. Game number 2. Jonah with match point.
Sylph. No. Bad Andrew. Yeah, that's fair.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, Eric is running a double spawner E-Barbs deck, and he took out Fireball to add in Rage. That is what he's playing.
That's gross. That's real gross.
So Jonah does go to the skies. Okay. See, that's why I was saying that I think he might play Lava, is just because, not even the great matchup conversation, but just because this deck is so freaking strong right now.
I'm curious to see what Tico's actually going with here. I mean, Zappies do make you feel like, and it's probably going to be pigs here now with the Zappies and the Royal Recruits. Yeah. Is Jonah running Fireball or not with this Lava Guards variant? A lot of Fireball bait on the board.
Yeah, for sure. And that E-Spirit getting a ton of value. Going to be actually a really nice cleanup there from Tico with the help of that E-Spirit and Flying Machine.
Does Jonah spend here, just tank this damage? I think he tanks it, and that's going to be 2 shots from the Flying Machine. Not much. Still has the lead here, and that does preserve a slight elixir lead Jonah decides to press the advantage here and go for a bit more damage, and Tico tanks and goes opposite lane with the piggies.
Yeah, Jonah going to be able to create a lot of pressure with that miner pretty regularly. The only good response to picking up the miner is going to be those Royal recruits or dropping an E-Spirit plus a Barb Barrel, but that's pretty tough to time. So we'll see. I think a lot of this match is going to be just Tico cycling things at the back and then trying to figure out which lane he's going to pursue, which will probably just continue to be the left lane, but then Jonah might switch where he wants the lava to be played in the back.
Barb Barrel to the left-hand side, outside of cage range, just for extra pressure. Jonah's forced to take that damage. 16:02, the lead now to Tico as we go into double elixir time. And shout out to Desh the Wraith saying posting this on Reddit with no context. I like it.
Do it, man. Don't do it. And there you go. Poison comes out for Jonah with the snowball. They're actually going to do a really nice job cleaning up, but you wonder how many times he's going to have both of those perfectly in cycle for the offensive push that comes in for Tico. And there you go.
Well, it just means that he's limited, right?
Yeah.
It means he's limited on offense because he'd love to use one or two of those to either clean up the defenders or to make some room with the snowball. But in this case, he's able to, the benefit here is able to defend relatively cheaply for how big that push was, and you saw the results on the right-hand side.
Yeah, and then just, talking about being able to get on top of that miner, which was, the Barb Barrel came out first, then had to turn around, and then the Goblin Brawler pops out of the cage and then runs behind the tower, which allows more units to connect on the front end. And this is just going to be kind of a slow and painful death for Tico moving forward, as it looks like Jonah probably just 2-0s this set, man.
Yeah, that snowball was real filthy. That snowball just said, hey, you know how you had recruits to stop my miner? They don't do that anymore, and I'm taking your tower. So Jonah with a real nice put together, both in terms of deck selection and in terms of play. And, man, it's a rough outing for Tico here with a clean 2-0 for the former #1 finisher on ladder.
Yeah, I don't know if the double spawner deck would have really worked out for Tico there. He might have had trouble just dealing with all the units in the air, even if he was able to get damage on tower. But I did still think that the opportunity to run lava seemed very prevalent for Jonah. I think maybe it was just a good guess on my end, but seeing Tico with a few more options to run against, or I guess match up against that deck, just because of how popular it is, how strong it is, would have been nice. But, again, hindsight's 20/20. Easy for me to say here.
Yeah, I mean, I've been good at picking decks after I've already lost many times, so it's been it's one of those ones where it can work out pretty nicely here and there, and working out nicely for Jonah so far, who will move on to the next round, and he'll be facing Bag. So Bag versus Jonah is going to be a fun matchup. And I'm going to pick this. I'm going to make this call right now. My guess is that Bag runs some sort of E-Golem deck as a troll against Jonah, because Bag likes to run E-Golem decks. Jonah got #1 with it, and it seems like his personality. So I'm going to call that right now. Bag is going to run E-Golem against Jonah.
E-Golem, Mortar, Lava Hound.
Yeah.
Let's see it. Let's see it for Bag. And our last quarterfinals matchup that we're waiting on, because as you just said, Bag and Jonah will face off, is going to be Ian and Alexi. That's the one that we've seen very, very little of, or those players probably the least of. Alexi, I don't think we watched any games yesterday, and we caught one of Ian's at the very, very end there. And Inthrill just sitting, waiting in the wings after defeating Lucas 2-1 to see who will move forward in that set.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one here. Inthrill with a big chance. And, we've been talking about him wanting to get that big moment. Right now, Inthrill with 2 good back-to-back weekend performances, and you add this one, I don't know what the numbers are going to be necessary to make it to qualify, but Inthrill's total points collection from the first 2 weekends puts him in a pretty good spot for qualifying for those playoffs. Yeah,
I would think so. And another player, I believe Tico would probably have a pretty good chance, even though we just saw him get eliminated by Jonah. He played very well last week and this week, and also made it to the top 16 last week. But I think he has been struggling in round #1. And when you look at the players that you could run into in round #1, it's not really saying a whole lot, right? You come in a round run and you run into Bag, or you run into Lucas, or what have you. Or last week, for instance, if you run into Legolas, who didn't make it this week, and he was just out by a couple games, but incredibly strong performance from him last week. And I think what I really enjoyed out of Legolas that I think we haven't maybe seen as much today is really sniping what your opponent doesn't have available. We saw Bag do it for sure with the double flying machine, Skeleton Dragon's push there, knowing Fireball's out of cycle, but for the most part, I feel like we've been seeing pretty standard kind of Clash.
Standard Clash is up for one player, obviously.
Right.
We're going to go ahead and jump into our game here in a moment. Ian versus Alexi. And I see Mr. Perfect there in the chat. Played 5 years ago for about 1 year. Didn't play for 4 years. Came back today. Yesterday, I'm hooked on it again. Welcome back, Mr. Perfect.
Welcome.
And what a fun place for you to be here in these great matchups for Royale Masters.
So here we go. Ian rocking some minor Spear Gobs with Fire Spirit. I was just going to say, it feels like Mortar's having a real comeback in the meta. There's been that one, Cannon Car Minion Horde deck that is number 1, but there's been a bunch of different other variants that have been popping up, which makes me very, very happy.
Oh, I played against that. I didn't realize it was number 1 right now. That explains a lot, because I was like, why is there Minion Horde?
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Yeah, it's really, really strong right now because it's all about just baiting out that Fireball, because Fireball is everywhere.
So 1906 left-hand side does take the lead away from Ian, or away from Alexi, and Ian goes with the pressure as Lava sets up to the right-hand side for Alexi.
Yeah, Ian not looking like he has a lot of great responses to air yet. You figure we would have seen bats come out if he had them already, so maybe he's got something a bit stronger in a Musketeer or a Hunter. But right now, talking about dealing with this Lava Hound, not a lot of great responses, especially when you look at, and there's the Musketeer coming down.
There's a Musketeer.
I was going to say, when you look at the arrows. So here we go. How's he going to defend this push?
And that's a nice little play with the miner there with the E-Barbs, forcing out one response up high and one response down low. But still beautifully defended by Ian. Arrows come in, and I mean, look, a great sequence both defensively and offensively. Ian comes out on top, and that mortar still just chipping away on the left-hand lane.
I mean, that was beautiful. He catches the miner with the knight, then he gets the spear goblins up high to deal with the E-Barbs as well, the last little lick of hair from that knight, and then the miner comes in right on top of the musketeer. Just beautiful, beautiful protection of his only way of taking that lava out of play. And like you said, the whole time, that mortar is just chipping away on the tower, and that fire spirit gets it within spell cycle range.
Well, Alexi put together a good sequence there, right? The E-Barbs and the miner, knowing the E-Barbs would demand a response up high to stay away from the musketeer. Ian was just one step ahead, and the arrows that could have gotten that musketeer down weren't there in time. And now some nasty pressure, though, from Alexi in both lanes.
Yeah, nice that Ian was able to cycle back around to that musketeer. I think he's actually going to be able to deal with this push pretty well on the left-hand side. But that Electro Dragon in these matchups is really difficult. Great fireball, and that is the game. That was it. All he needed to do was get that Electro Dragon off the board, and you saw how much he spent on the front end dealing with it. Knight, plus Musketeer, plus Spear Goblins, plus, and then getting that fireball in at the end. Just really well played there by Ian.
Yeah, really beautiful, really beautiful, and just being one step ahead, being able to see what's coming down the pipeline, and just getting a great read on what were the next 2 or 3 things that happened, and that one sequence just locked things down for the American, and he has the advantage match point in this quarterfinal.
A lot of times when you're playing Mortar against, or Mortar bait against Lava Hound decks, is you have a difficult time creating enough offensive pressure and then having enough elixir to defend adequately, right? Because a lot of times when you go into Lava Hound, you'll send in a miner plus like bats or spear goblins, and they can usually just ignore that entire push and just double down on their lava push, and then you cannot defend in a 2-tower game. Maybe you each take 1, but they're going to have the advantage when you go to 2 towers. What I loved what Ian did there was he never spent too much on offense, and he always made sure he had something protecting his musketeer. That was his #1 priority in that game, and it seems so simple, but as that time goes on and as double elixir comes in, it's really difficult to make those heads-up plays on the spot.
Yeah, it's a real challenge, and I wonder, looking back at that one major sequence where it was defended well and the mortar that ruined that left-hand side, I wonder if Alexi might have been better served by splitting those E-Barbs up high. Does not get and put the pressure on the same way on the musketeer, but does force Ian to make a choice about whether to support that mortar or not. Does put pressure on that side. I do go back and wonder about that moment, because that did seem like a pivotal moment overall in this match.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting thing that you talk about, because if the E-Barbs did go down on that left-hand side, you think that Ian would do the cheapest responses to try to pull it away, so he probably would have still went Fire Spirit, and then he probably would have went Spear Goblins, but would he have had the wherewithal then to catch the miner at the same time, dealing with 2 separate lanes, right? Because even if he doesn't catch the miner in the one lane, he now has got another tank in front of his musketeer if the miner doesn't go to the muskie. So yeah, I think that's actually a really fascinating point that you bring up there. Would dual lane pressure be better in that sequence beforehand? Because he tried it in the next one, but by that point, Ian had already had so much lockdown, he'd already done so much damage, he didn't have to worry about creating any offensive presence for the rest of the game.
We also went with both E-Barbs in the same lane, and you don't see Elite Barbarians split very often. But it's one of those situations where this is one where one Elite Barbarian can put so much pressure on that mortar, it saves your tower, makes them make decisions, and they still have to deal with the other Elite Barbarian that's being tanked for by the Lava Hound. So it's not often done, and I understand why it's not often done, but that did feel like maybe an opportunity missed there for us to see it happen. And now he has to figure out what to do against Ian in game number 2. And right so far, it's been difficult for everybody to figure out what to do against Ian in those moments.
100%. I mean, he's a really, really exceptional player. And like I said, we ended our day with him and Lucas going head-to-head yesterday. It was a great back-and-forth set. And talking about, you know, opportunity and exceptional players, I see a couple people in chat asking about how do they join. Yes, you can still join Royale Masters. Last Sunday, when we finished our broadcast, within a couple hours or within a short amount of time, you were already able to register for the following weekend. So we're going to do the same thing here. Go follow Royale Masters on Twitter. Go to the Discord from there. Follow along with all the rules. It will give you all the instructions of how to join the competition. And next week is our last open qualifier. But then we got the LCQ, and then we have the playoffs, where over $10,000 will be given away over the next few weeks. $5,000 today, $5,000 next weekend. So you can still join. There's still many ways to do it. All you got to do is follow along with Royale Masters.
And there you go. I just put the command Discord in the Twitch chat so you guys can see it. There's the link. You can always put that anytime you want and go ahead and join up there. You know, if you're asking, hey, how do I play competitive Clash Royale? There you go. That's how you get it. It's available to you. It's available to anybody. And, you know, what's interesting, I know people, there's a lot of, you know, some people are not into pushing ladder, into maxing decks. Guess what? Competitive Clash Royale is played at, drumroll please, tournament standard. That's level 9. So all you gotta do is master some decks at level 9, and you can play in Royale Masters and tournaments like this one that have open qualifiers, open opportunities. Yes, CRL requires that you qualify by ladder, but not all of competitive Clash does that. So here's your opportunity right here in front of you.
GTO Reg 44 saying, Ian never watches his replays. He told me all he ever focuses on is his mindset. Interesting. I wonder if that's true.
Well, you know, I never watch my replays, and it's worked out, I think, just as well as it has for Ian. So, you know, I think everyone should not watch their replays.
Yeah, I don't like watching mine either unless they're good dubs. So here we go. Lava Loon. Haven't seen a lot of Lava Loon as of late, but Ian going to go to the skies in an old school version.
Yeah, I'm curious to see which, and there you go, nice little King Tower activation, but that bomb, this is going to be interesting. You still need a whole lot of damage here. Arrows come in. And a kite with the wall breakers does the Inferno Dragon touch.
That was not the kite he was looking for. He played him just, I believe, a little too far away. Inferno able to get on. Now you see this Magic Archer getting dropped down as well. He's down a couple elixir, and this Magic Archer will require a response if he wants, but he really doesn't need to drop one. He could really just set back up and drop another Lava Hound. He decides to go Baby Dragon.
You know, it's one of those ones where that's a hard call because you are going to give up, you know, about, you know, I think, what is it at tournament standard? Is it 11-11 at tournament standard? Is it 111 at tournament standard? Or is it ladder? So you're going to give up a few hundred HP on that right-hand tower if you don't respond to it. So I do understand why Ian decided to control there.
Valkyrie just going to wave to that Miner as she walks across the bridge. Miner going to live on the tower, and this is definitely something he is going to have to ignore. And that Miner going to narrow that gap by just a bit. And really nice placement there on the wall breakers.
So here we go, 981 to 936. Lead currently for Alexis. He sets up his Magic Archer in the back, controls the Brawler into the middle. But that's a nice little poison there. It's kind of frustrating for Alexi as he throws the bomb tower, has to throw it into the poison. Yeah,
that is really frustrating. You're thinking about, you know, all Alexi has to do in this sequence is really just defend his Magic Archer, and wasn't able to do it because of that poison. Really nice last-second NATO there to keep this tower alive, but once again, it just feels like delaying the inevitable with poison and arrows on the other side of the board and only 25 seconds left in this game.
And it's going to be real difficult with 936 to get enough damage on that right-hand side playing a Miner Wall Breakers deck to do anything significant. Wall Breakers are going to come in through behind, but Cage going to be done high, and this should be enough to seal this one for Ian.
Oh, but look at this. This is going to be tower down on the bottom as well. Valkyrie gets there, and I'm going to steal a little saying here from Breaky, who says spin to win. I actually like that a lot for Valkyrie, and that's exactly what she just does right there.
Yeah, that was just a bit of maybe a miscalculation. Didn't have the elixir or the timing to stop the Valk a half step early. That should have been a win for Ian right there. He still has the lead on that King Tower, but look at how low that left-hand side is, 1306. I still think that Ian has a pretty significant advantage here, but you open a door like that and you're opening up the possibility of disaster.
Yeah, so this is actually the correct thing to do. Now that the Wall Breakers are out of cycle and that Magic Archer was cycled in the back, Ian didn't have anything to worry about offensively. He was able to go right back on his own offense, and now he should be able to clean this up really easily. Yep, Valkyrie in, and a pretty big push here, but that Magic Archer getting an insane amount of value for Alexi.
Yeah, the NATO Magic Archer work has been good, and Ian not able to get poisoned down the way he wants. He's spending too much time defending. So Magic Archer, that one's been on board for a long time. Arrows help with the spears, but again, that Magic Archer might get 111 shots. Forget 111 damage.
Yeah, and still just being protected here. Valkyrie up high, going to get on top of that Baby Dragon. There's the lineup we're looking for. That is exactly what Alexi needed to do, and then the wall breakers come in. What a beautiful final few moments there, man. That was picture perfect, and I know you love those Magic Archer lineups.
I mean, you see the chat talking about the NATOs as well. The NATO, the Brawler away from the Valk. The general NATO work overall from Alexi was brilliant throughout that game. The Magic Archer lineup, but it all came down to he just couldn't get that Magic Archer off the board. Protected it like crazy, and in decks where you're playing Magic Archer, just like Musketeer, the longer you keep that Magic Archer on the board, the more that 4 elixir gets elixir value of 5, of 6, of 7.
Yep.
It turns into being like a 12 elixir value Magic Archer, and I mean that one there was priceless.
Oh, exactly, man. I mean, you couldn't have said it better myself. You talk about us kind of breaking down what that Magic Archer was doing defensively, and then the same Magic Archer turns around and wins the game for him with a perfectly lined up NATO, and then he goes minor wall breakers in the pocket. He knows exactly what is in and out of cycle. That's the only thing he can do in that situation. A game that he had no business winning. Honestly, that all goes back to that one Valkyrie spinning to win, somehow connects to the tower, just enough splash damage. And like you said, Rich, maybe just a bit of a misstep there by Ian, not recognizing where he was at elixir-wise or dropping that miner a little too low. Just something that seems completely avoidable, especially because of what we were referencing earlier in the match, which was me going, all right, maybe he's just going to sacrifice this and set up a Lava Hound push in the other lane. You go, yeah, well, that's still 400 damage. He should defend. If you're going to defend at that point, you need to continue to defend all the way through.
Yeah, that was interesting. I wish I could go back and look at that moment, because I think that Ian got a bit caught between deciding whether to defend the miner on the tower or and defend the Valk.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think you either need to put his defensive troop, I think it was a Valkyrie, just a little bit higher on the miner to the outside so that the Valk doesn't get the tower, or just forget the miner and go, I'm going to make the pick here that the Valkyrie is a more dangerous target right now than the miner and try to seal this thing right now. Didn't end up doing it, kind of got just caught being a bit indecisive in that moment maybe, and ended up turning all the way around to the L.
Those are so frustrating when you're playing and you have options, but you don't know which one you want to play, and then the moment passes you, just like we saw there for Ian. Kookie LMAO says, hi, wow, this is so sweaty and strategic and just crazy cool all over. That's competitive CR for you, man. You talk about plays in game that you never see and you only see on broadcast. That's why these are the best in the world, and that's why we just get to talk about it.
Let's see. Ezra Trogliero asking, Rich, is that color natural? This is I don't have any dye in my hair, but the lights in my room make my blonde hair look a little bit reddish. So yes and no is the answer to your question. And to your second question, BO3 me if you dare. I don't BO3 people. So you know, I don't care who you are. The Pope could ask me, and I'd say have fun playing ladder, Pope. We're not doing a BO3 anytime soon.
Yeah, I want to continue to like all the people that I interact with in game, and playing best of threes against my friend feels like a way to really frustrate myself or one of us.
To be honest, I might BO3 the Pope, though, because...
I was going to say, the Pope, maybe, I mean, you know.
I think I'd beat him. I just think that one's actually a pretty easy matchup.
I feel like he'd run Battle Healer, though. I don't know why. Yeah,
actually, that does feel really accurate. Really frustrating matchup there, potentially. I do see someone in the chat asking, are the Musketeers good? Box Wolf guy. I don't know if you mean the 3 Musketeers or you mean the Musketeer itself. Musketeer itself, good, but not OP like it used to be.
Yeah.
3 Musketeers, mostly dead. Mostly a dead card. Some people play it, but yeah, not great for 3M.
Yeah, feels like 3M is having a bit of a comeback right now, but I feel like it does that in almost every meta, where for like a week people try to play it and then they realize like it still just sucks. Go ahead.
No, as I say, it's also one of those things where I think right now, with how strong Lava Hound is, people really put some real effort into the new meta to try to figure out if 3M was back, because 3M matches up nicely against Lava Hound, and there's something just slightly not there about 3 Musketeers that makes it not work.
I don't know what needs to be changed about 3M to make them viable. I don't know if it has to do with the elixir. You know, they tried the drop time and all that stuff. I don't think it is exactly in that. I don't think you changed the fire rate of the Musketeer, because the single Musketeer is still so good. It's just such a difficult card to balance, because one Musketeer seems to be fine in the meta, but then the 3 still seems to be underutilized.
Yeah, they've tried everything to figure out how to balance it, and it's one of those cards that either is going to be underpowered or overpowered, and I think the game is better when it's slightly underpowered.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's one of the hard things about balancing that card. And hard things here, making choices in game number 3. Alexi going with a very interesting Ram Rider variation up against Ian's double bait.
And I was curious here, and it looks like Ian might be answering my question unless it's just a cycle or starting hand conversation, is does he have a building? Because there's a lot of bait decks out there that do not have buildings, and this one may be one of them with the delivery in there.
And the Goblin Hut out for Alexi, going to put pressure on that left-hand side. Obviously, Arrow is going to be nice for Princess, but you do also have 2 other bait cards to worry about, or 3 if you count the Dark Goblin.
And that Dark Goblin comes down right now to help clean up those spears, get a little bit of damage on this hut to take it off the board. Princess going to help out with that.
Remember, no log and no fireball available, no log and no fireball available for Ian. And on Alexi's side, no log and no NATO.
So you understand why the respective players went with what they have. But I do really think Ian's going to find himself struggling down the road here to get on top of those huts without a big spell. The last card is Rocket. He's not going to want to spend that. And then, of course, dealing with this Ram Rider.
Yeah, Ram Rider's going to be the really curious one because it feels like Ram Rider's going to touch at least pretty consistently throughout this matchup. The one thing about the Ram Rider that's going to be interesting is when Alexi chooses to use it to maximize its defensive side of the board as well, not just offensive. But I don't know how important that is. As you can see, though, getting stretched a bit thin here as Alexi, and Ian takes advantage.
Yeah, and that was a really bad fireball. It was really late. It seems like the effect of the barrel had already come in. Maybe he takes a couple hundred more damage, but now he finds himself in a weird elixir position. I don't love that, and then you can see this Ram Rider push being set up by Alexi now. And he does have an Inferno Tower. Okay, so it was probably just a cycle situation or starting hand, so makes this matchup a little bit better for Ian.
And that Inferno Tower pulling double duty there against both the Flying Machine and the Ram Rider, so set up nicely right now is Ian. The Dark Goblin does get directly onto that Goblin Hut with the Princess as well. So Ian, despite having some challenges here, in a pretty good position as we go into sudden death overtime, in the lead by a pretty significant margin.
Yeah, I would have loved to see something catch that Dark Goblin. It felt like such an obvious pull because the hut was played just a little high. And really, when you talk about options for Ian to get on top of the huts, you don't need to give him that option. You don't need to give him a way to get to your Goblin Hut by spending that Dark Goblin.
This deck just a little bit slow on Alexi's side, and of course you see arrows come out here, but then now Ian's going to go ahead and say, okay, well, Dark Goblins and Princesses are about to make your life real difficult.
And very happy setting them up just a little bit far away from each other. That way they can't get taken off with arrows, and now continues the pressure. That way arrows need to be used somewhere else.
Interesting choice there not to protect the Princess against that cannon cart. Still 15:58 is the mark on the top right-hand side as we have 1:20 left and a 3-3 split for Alexi.
Princess at the river, easy pull there, which means Zappies have to come out high, which is exactly what Ian wants to do there. Not even really about getting damage on tower, which is also just a little cherry on top, but we all know the worst thing is when you get those 6-man split, and then you get the Zappies behind, and then you get the Flying Machine behind that, and then the Ram Rider comes down. So making sure that his opponent is playing out of sequence, Ian is giving himself a great advantage.
And look at how much Ian is focusing on trying to keep that Dark Goblin alive, and Inferno Tower does turn to the Flying Machine here. Zappy's on the right-hand side for Alexi as the Valk gets one swing on the left-hand lane for Ian.
What's really impressive here about what Ian's doing is it feels like there's always a Dark Goblin on the board. Yes, Princess is great, but Dark Goblin, in my opinion, just a little bit stronger when you're talking about that single target DPS up close that he needs to clean up. And once again, Goblins on that tower on the right-hand side, and Alexi was just not able to create offense at all in this game.
Yeah, but look at how low Ian is on Elixir, and then the cannon cart. Oh,
cannon cart late.
Word.
I mean, excuse me, Valkyrie late. Cannon cart does connect, but somehow does get pushed back or retargeted. 527 to 879. Ian is somehow going to sneak away with this one.
Yeah, I guess so. Not enough to get the fireball and the arrows in. I don't know if that would be enough damage anyway. No. Wow, that was nearly a throw there. Whoa. That cannon cart just needed one more shot to make this a very, very different result. And Ian does hold on in the end. And that's the danger, the heavy hitting. The Ram Rider got in, cannon cart snuck in behind Alexi with a great last-second attempt, but nicely held on by Ian, who will move on to our semifinals.
I'm not exactly sure what happened there in the final moments, because what looked like happened was the cannon cart came across the bridge, the Valkyrie was dropped too late, right? That's how the cannon cart ended up getting all that damage, but then the cannon cart retargeted on the Valkyrie, which the cannon cart does not usually do. It doesn't usually retarget when it goes off of its wheels, so there must have been some small interaction there that I missed on broadcast, but somehow getting away by the skin of his teeth is Ian. We call it luck or call it outplays. That was really dang close.
You know what I don't know is the mass of the Valkyrie versus the cannon cart.
Might have pushed
Obviously,
it.
you can push some things back when you drop, and I guess maybe that might have been what happened there.
Yeah.
Is the Valk one that dropped pushed the cannon cart a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what it had to have been, because there's really no other way. There was nothing else that reset it. So I think that's a good call on your end. Maybe someone can let us know in the chat if that's what they saw. But yeah, Ian moves on, and we are getting closer and closer. And then there were 4: Inthrill,
Yep.
Ian, Jonah, and Bag, as we take a look at our bracket here. And you know, one side of the board, we have a little bit more known players up, I guess, higher, maybe just because of Bag there. But Jonah, Ian, and Inthrill feels like pretty much all at the same level.
Yeah, I mean, Ian's definitely one of those players who's certainly on the rise, and we've talked about it a lot. Ian looks like a guy who, with the right moments and the right opportunities, he has a really good chance of having a breakout year in 2022 for CRL. Inthrill, obviously another kid who's on the rise. Jonah's one of those guys who I think a good competitive win would go a long way for him. You know, he got a first place finish on ladder, but he got razzed for it pretty hard because that finish was with Golem Battle Healer. And I think that a good competitive showing would do a lot to add just that little extra bit of validity to Jonah as a top tier player.
I just think it's so funny. Like, you got to number 1 on ladder, but you did it with this. It's like, yo, number 1 on ladder. Doesn't matter what you do it with. And looking at Ian yesterday, his final 2 rounds were a 2-1 over Ardentois and then a 2-1 over Lucas. So really not a surprise to see where he's at today, as he was the only person in Group C that walked away undefeated. And that was a group with Ardentois, Predator, Lucas, CMG Mark, and Abdu Judo, who was perfect last week. So, you know, Ian has really kind of shown his strength this weekend. And now going to the other side of it with another CMG representative, Jonah versus Bag.
Yeah, look at that Ram Rider catch on the right-hand side. This is the thing about Bag. You know, we talk a lot about all the crazy decks that Bag does, but then every once in a while, Bag goes, you know what, I'm going meta this match. This is going to be pretty straight up and down. So MK Ram Rider, you know, the Stack the Legendaries bridge spam here for Bag in game number 1.
Yeah, and you know what? I love to see it. As much as I love to watch Bag play off meta, I do love when he leans just a little bit more into it. I think he gives himself a better advantage against better players, right? When you talk about working through our open qualifiers, you can get really crazy decks out there, but there's a reason why Bag hasn't kind of established himself as that top 1%. And I think it's because when he gets up to that highest tier, some of his fun decksmanship doesn't quite translate.
And, you know, speaking of decksmanship, here we go. He threw the wizard in here. So we'll see if the wizard ends up being the benefit or the drawback. Of course, you know, you would like to have some good single target DPS for the both the baby dragon and the lava hound, but you have an inferno dragon.
Yep.
So there you go.
Exactly, and that wizard can be helped or used to help clean up all of those lava pups, but can he just do it over and over? Really just beautiful lightning there. Clears the path, takes off the defensive unit. That brawler is just off in no man's land, gets taken out by the Ram Rider, and just a beautiful sequence there. I know, and you and I had heard a player talk about this years ago, about lightning in general as a spell, and how it is so much more of an offensive, aggressive, surprise you spell. And when it's used like that to take a building off on a charging unit, it's just picture perfect.
Yeah, and that most certainly was. 17 seconds left. Bag has to hold here, and this should be nice and clean. And it looks like he will be able to get it done. The wizard doing its job in this matchup, and you know, we talk about that a lot with Bag, but that's 1 out of the 8 cards he does not mind to sacrifice after game 1.
Yeah, you know what? That's a really great point that you make. You talk about playing a little bit more on meta. Wizard is not, but Wizard does pay dividends here in this matchup, doing great splash damage to all those units piling up at the bridge, and of course dealing with those pups. And yeah, it is crazy when you see Bag do exactly, I think, what he needed to do here, which was still play his game. There's still the Wizard out there, but he still had a stronger synergy with the rest of his cards in the deck, and you saw how easily he took that tower with the Ram Rider Lightning push.
Yeah, and I mean, that's exactly how you draw up a Ram Rider Lightning Push. Just bang, bang, play, get right on through, and Tower in a whole lot of trouble. So game number 1 in our semifinal, first semifinal does go to Bag. And again, we take a look at the deck that he played. Let me go ahead and pull that one up here. We'll talk about what's out.
I like this from Beast. Who cares how you get to number 1? Hate the card, not the player. That's right, man.
Yes, but
that's right.
But then go right down to Sylph, who says, I don't know, I think the Stinky Cheese deck deserves an asterisk even on number 1 on ladder. So you have two different you have competing points of view, right? Is that the Barry Bonds set? It's an outdated reference. Is that the Barry Bonds home run record, or is it not? And the fun part is that's up to you to decide.
Yeah,
you get to
yeah,
choose.
exactly. There is no right answer. I could not even get to the top 1,000 with E-Golem, but I will always hate that deck, and I will always talk trash about it as long as I'm able to in this position.
Yeah, as long as you're able to have that feeling. So nice work overall for Bag in game number 1, and he didn't run E-Golem Battle Healer in game 1. Maybe he's taken it seriously enough, and that's what it is here. Although, keep in mind, I believe that none of the cards that he ran in game 1 do interfere with that deck. So I'm looking at it right now, and yeah, maybe Bag is watching is listening to the stream here. Maybe he's reading the same thing. Maybe he's matured, whatever it might be. But fingers crossed here for Eagle and Battle here on game number 2. It doesn't look like it with the Skeleton Dragons.
Yeah, well, it is Bag, so those Skelly Dragons could be replacing the Inferno that sometimes shows up in there that he doesn't have available anymore. But it also could be Golem, or RG, because Bag just does what he does. And Lumberjack coming out.
This might be that Lumber Lava deck that we saw earlier from him.
And Dark Prince now.
So maybe Golem again? I don't know, man. Who knows? Maybe it's Minor Hog Rider. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know.
It's like the moment you start guessing stuff, the next card that comes down makes you think something completely different. And I'm sure Jonah's in the exact same boat as us right now, but probably happy he has the poison, happy he has the Minor to deal with that elixir pump. And it is Golem.
Yeah, it is Golem. I'm just doing a Jonah impression right now. That's all I'm doing. And I'm like, oh my god, what the heck is happening?
I mean, we said Golem in there somewhere, so apparently it is going to be Golem Pump, and a big part of this matchup for Jonah is making sure that those pumps do not get any legs on them. They need to get taken off the board as soon as possible.
Well, what I don't know, it looks like Jonah's running back the exact same deck, which means no tank killer in this deck. So that Golem's just going to go ahead and be a huge problem for him every single time.
You see what he has to poison here, which means Bag is happy to let this push go, happy to get a little bit more damage from this Electro Dragon, reset up an Elixir Pump, and then he just has to catch the Minor. And once he catches that Minor, he's going to find himself in a really great advantage for at least the next minute of gameplay. So we'll see how he wants to do that. I'm assuming we'll see an Elixir Pump come down on the right-hand side, and then a Lumberjack cycled. Oh no, he's going to go right at the bridge.
Just goes full send on that left-hand side. This is peak Bag right now, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, and he just missed up one interaction there. Had he been able to get those guards turned into piggies, he would have had a beautiful push with the Mother Witch behind. Still going to go into the same lane as his weaker tower, still with Golem over Lava Hound. Not bad position for Bag to be in.
And to clarify, I do see Indigo Perez asking about why did you get to play Lava again? Because in this tournament for Royale Masters, it's a modified version of Duel Mode, where you only burn cards if you win with them.
Yep.
So Bag cannot play any of the cards from game number 1, but Jonah still can, which is why he's running that deck back one more time.
And Jonah there does play pretty clean defense, gets another Lava Hound in front of this big push. Not bad, but this Mother Witch actually going to do a good job distracting all the support units for just a moment. While Bag has a little bit more time to set up his defense, he needs this Electro Dragon to come through, and it does.
Huge pickup here, but still a lot of damage coming in. And with that pump being there, played in front of King Tower, the poison able to go to pump as well. So I really don't know about that specific choice. Pump being played, I mean, maybe he's trying to play it from a defensive standpoint for some reason. I need to go back and figure out what that pump was all about, because that's the second time today we've seen pump played in a situation where spending 6 elixir defense when you're on defense for a card that's meant to build you up for a later push.
Yeah.
maybe a bit risky. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, Bag was in a really good spot for that entire game until he decided to do... and look, there's very few times when I sit up here and I think I actually know better than the pros. I can usually just break things down. But I really, truly believe Bag should have set up that Elixir pump and then tried to catch the miner with the Lumberjack and the Dark Prince. As opposed to dropping the Lumberjack Dark Prince at the bridge to support, I believe, the Mother Witch. He almost got a great thing out of it, but he didn't. And then he completely gave up that advantage, the fact that his opponent did not have poison and cycle, and the only way he could hurt him is with that miner. But it would have been an easy catch with the Lumberjack plus Dark Prince, and then I think it would have been an easy game for Bag from that point on.
Serenity Brawl's saying in the chat, I don't know why Bag yellowed at the bridge.
Yeah.
And the response there from Flashing, he was predicting the Hound. So maybe he was trying to go ahead and run right through when a Hound came down, and went hard, but that's also one of those ones where, you know, you predict wrong, and the predictions certainly some turn into prophecies about the end of the game for you. So,
and I understand wanting to predict that, but he didn't have to, Rich. He still had the advantage. He had more damage done. He had the stronger of the two tanks. They were going in the same lane. I just think he really needed to set up that pump. And look, if you're going to have that weird card in your deck, you might as well use it.
And yeah, might as well use it in an opportune moment. So for now, if we go into our game number 3 here, reminder that Bag played the Ram Rider Mega Knight with Lightning and Barb Barrel in game number 1. Inferno Dragon also off the board. Now Jonah not allowed to play Lava Hound Guard. So that's one thing that's nice about this one for Bag. If we're talking about trying to make deck picks for game number 3, the one thing that Bag doesn't have to worry about is any significant aerial attack. I don't think that Jonah goes with some sort of lumber cycle, lumber loon. Obviously can't go minor loon. I don't think he goes that direction. So it does make picking your defensive side of this a bit easier for Bag in game number 3.
I would really like to see Bag go with some weird, faster cycle graveyard deck here. You talk about Poison being out of cycle, Guards being out of cycle, Snowball being out of cycle. Those are all great responses, obviously, to Graveyard. There's other options out there, but I think Graveyard would be really tough to deal with right now for Jonah.
Cannon card to the left-hand side for both players, so it could be Graveyard in both directions, potentially. We'll see, of course. One card, not quite enough.
Yeah, Graveyard Mega Minion. Feels like we definitely could be leaning towards Graveyard.
And Jonah wins that battle. Snowball goes to the cannon cart, but not the Inferno Dragon, and things looking a little rough right now for Bag in the opening moments.
Yeah, I just feel like Bag is getting a little bit more aggressive than he needs to, and now we see Witch come out in defense against this Graveyard. Inferno Dragon tanking that tower as one skeleton sneaks around front and ends up making this a pretty nice cleanup for Bag. Okay. Valkyrie, Cannon Cart, he does go Graveyard, so I was at least right about the win condition, but everything else about it just feels odd, but could be a great matchup.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, and you know, that's the thing about Bag. It's hard. We talked about how he yellowed at the bridge last game. It's hard to figure out when Bag is being a genius or being a crazy person. Yeah. and that's, I guess, the line between those two things is very thin overall, between genius and insanity. And Bag likes to toe that one. And it looked like when he played the Witch low, it felt like maybe he was toying with the insanity portion of it, but then on the back end ends up looking genius. So who the hell knows?
And a little bit of an exclamation point on the point that you're making right there is Nuspy here in the chat says, Bag is make or break, and that's why we love him. And you know what? It's true. I mean, there's a reason why we opened our day off with Bag, and the fact that, I mean, we're watching all the matches now, but at the beginning of the day, we were like, all right, there's 16 players, there's 8 matches, let's watch Bag play.
That's a nice sequence for Bag right there, getting a lot of fireball value. Now that Cannon Cart should stay out of the opposing Cannon Cart range for a while and protects it. He does with the Valkyrie.
And that's exactly what he needed to do there. There would have been such a waste of elixir on that Cannon Cart had he not spent. And again, a fireball back out here for Jonah. Really, really nicely placed.
So here we go, Inferno Dragon to the left-hand side. This time the Witch going to do a much better job of handling that at the right moment as we go into the final 15 seconds about here. It is a slight lead right now for Bag over Jonah, but nothing decided yet.
This makes me happy to think about Nazia Skin asking, are they playing against each other? I wish that I could play on camera with this much poise. There's absolutely no way.
yeah, if we were like this calm while playing against each other and being able to, let's just joke, break it down, whatever, it's fine.
That's not me. That's not how I play.
No, we both know. 1778. Oh yeah, to 1446.
Yeah, and honestly, you know, Jonah has some really great responses here. He's able to set the line high, no problem. He's got that big, you know, DPS dealer in that Inferno Dragon, and the Archers. The Archers are just such great cleanup, which is why Bag is looking for them every single time. Great fireball value there. Should maybe throw a snowball as well to get that cannon cart off wheels, but he's going to have to deal with this push first.
Yeah, he might. I mean, he has to defend against that graveyard. The cannon cart, though, going to get really deep in enemy territory.
It's on tower.
Oh, boy.
Yep.
Oh, boy. GG, well played. And the scales of insanity versus genius, one more time, tip the direction Bag's not going for. Man, like I said, I'm here for it. He's fun as heck to watch. Jonah goes a little more down the line and gets the win here against Bag.
Yeah, looking at our Game 3 matchup there, you see Jonah running kind of what I was actually hoping he'd run. It's maybe even a little heavier than what I was talking about, but you see, you know, with the archers, with the arrows, with the knight, it's pretty quick for him to get back around and then be able to support those graveyards. And I think what was really good for him, or for Jonah, is that he looks like, honestly, when you look at his deck, he anticipated running into graveyard. He didn't have poison to deal with it, so what did he have? He had archers, he had arrows, and he had great units to deal with setting that line. That's one of the hardest things that you have when running graveyard, is that you don't win those bridge battles, and it's really tough to lose a bridge battle with a knight, cannon, cart, and an Inferno Dragon. Let's take a look at the bracket here, man. We're down to 4.
Yeah, down to our final chunk here. And, man, so you see Jonah moving on into our final Bag. Not done yet. Does have the third place match. Some points and cash there on the line. He'll face the winner, or the loser, of Ian versus Inthrill. And the winner will go on to the final to face Jonah. Jonah, of course, with a shot at the championship. And, yeah, just one more time. Which, right? Bag goes, which? Bananas, but of course he's not done. We're not done. We have one more semifinal, our third place match, and our grand championship match coming up next. We'll be back in 3 minutes with some more Clash Royale here at Royale Masters.
so abstract. Yeah, it's complicated. What you say, the way you act.
And welcome back here to our second semifinal at Royale Masters. One more time, I'm Rich Slayton. That's Andrew Guy. Hey, I did point the correct direction. You never know. We're talking about these mirrored screens. And we're down to our second semifinal. We already have one player in the third place match in bag, and Jonah awaiting the victor here for that championship. Of course, this is an open event. That means that you watching right now can play in it. Go ahead and hit Command Discord. That's exclamation point Discord in the Twitch chat for the link. You can go to the Discord and find out all the information you need to register for next weekend. Of course, there's more cash available, and of course, points to qualify for our playoffs for our Grand Championship, where there is a massive prize pool there. And Andrew, so far, we've seen a bit of both. We've seen some top-tier veterans mixed in here, some long-time semi-pro players, and some brand-new unknowns have some pretty good success here.
Yeah, and talking about guys that have had a great amount of success, Ian, we've talked about a lot. Inthrill, though, we've mentioned him for weeks now. We're finally getting to see some of his action at the bottom of the screen, Inthrill and Ian at the top. Yesterday, Inthrill was able to take out Legend A on his way, Eunice on the way, Gabo on his way, and he was another perfect weekend for him. And he's doing great here, as last week he didn't make it past the first round. Oh, and he also beat Wero in round 2 yesterday. So, you know, a guy that has played very, very well, and he opened his day with a win over FCN Philippe. So Inthrill can do it against anyone. He just needs to put it together when it matters most.
And up against Ian running Lava Miner guards with Electro Dragon. We've seen quite a bit of Electro Dragon today. Maybe maybe a surprising quantity.
It's so strong in the meta right now because Fireball is so popular, and because Magic Archer or other units that can get through to that unit are not quite as popular. Because what you need to do is you either need to spell the Electro Dragon and then drop something on top of it, or you need to focus solely on it from the beginning. And it's just really not an easy card to focus on because it's always coming behind something else. So I truly still believe with the stun, with the reset, with the slow, and with its amount of HP, the E-Dragon is still one of the strongest cards in the game.
Well, especially in a meta where Lightning's not that popular.
Yep.
Right? Like, when Lightning was crazy popular back in the RG Lightning days, playing Electro Dragon was a pretty big gamble. But now, between dual mode and Lightning not being popular, you see the opportunities.
Yeah, and E-Dragon just so strong when dealing with decks like this from Inthrill. Gonna deal with that minion horde really well, gonna deal with the spear goblins. Gonna even help right here. It's kind of a misstep, and you can see Ian being mad about it, but even helps reset the cannon cart after targeting that right-hand tower with the late miners. So just so much great utility. And Inthrill not going for the King Tower activation here. Looks like he's just going to eat the damage.
Yeah, I guess happy to eat it and set up for this right-hand side as the E-Dragon does a lot. Fireball comes in on the Minion Horde, and that right there is why I still think Minion Horde is a weird choice in Clash Royale.
It really is, man. Fireball's so popular right now, but it's all about using it when that spell is out of cycle, which obviously we just saw it was not. It is a +1 trade for Ian, and Inthrill having a really difficult time figuring out how he wants to take the Electro Dragon off the board and then turn that Minion Horde around and help out with the Lava Hound.
Does not get the Flying Machine on the left-hand side for Ian, and now has to contend with the Minion Horde. The E-Drag will come out and do its job. So here we go, sudden death overtime. Lead right now for Inthrill, 608 on that right-hand side as the miner goes to the outside corner here. We'll see what kind of pressure Ian chooses to put on, but looks like he might be in too much trouble.
Yeah, you know, he looked like he was trying to clear a path there for a moment and just not going to do it. Mortar does still end up connecting, and Inthrill plays that. I mean, it looked a little sloppy, but it was also because you have to give credit where credit's due, and his opponent, he was able to play that really, really freaking well, man. When you talk about Minion Horde running into Fireball plus Electro Dragon, he did a good job.
Yeah, well, you talk about a guy like Inthrill, talking about doing a good job. Had some competitive experience in team format before 2021. But in 2021, this is where he's broken out as a competitive solo player. Did not have a single notable tournament before this year, and then you've seen him a bunch, of course, over in Game Stars, a little bit of performance, some moderate performance so far in CRL. Nice work in the ESL Mobile Open and the Clash with a Q-Lash Clans Cup. He's done really, really well as a solo player this year, and I wonder how much of that is the explosion of dual format.
Yeah, you know, and you look at what he did at CRL, he's not even in the top couple hundred there, so still trying to make up for it, but I think it's a lot of it is because he caught steam halfway through the year. So we'll see if we'll see more of him in 2022. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of it, Rich, maybe is the duels format. Maybe that really does help Inthrill out, and he finds himself succeeding later on in sets. As we've seen here in these BO3s, he really seems to be in a good spot. And right there with what we saw, he played through a really hard, I don't know if we want to call it like a really bad matchup, but it definitely wasn't an easy one. And the ability that he had to able to take that tower at the end with his mortar in the same lane and continue to keep that dual lane pressure up so that he didn't get that Electro Dragon behind the Lava Hound again. Because I think that would have been the biggest problem, is if those big pushes came down Lava plus E-Dragon, but that only happened once early on.
Yeah, it only happened. I'm taking a look at some of Inthrill's performance so far in CRL. You mentioned his positioning, and he started in the 3rd season of CRL, made it to the round robin stage in that 1st season, and then just had a bunch of stages where he did not make it past the Swiss bracket. So, we'll see if maybe this is the final culmination of Inthrill's skill set.
And looking like he's going to go with most likely Bowler Loon Freeze, but we did actually see this same combination with Graveyard, which it is kind of known to run, but Bowler Loon Freeze has been the more popular competitive usage of Bowler in Inferno.
Yeah, well, the hard part about playing Bowler Graveyard Freeze right now is that how popular Mother Witch is, and you have no Fireball for the Mother Witch, right? So most Graveyard decks right now, or a lot of them are running a big spell, either Fireball or Poison, but mostly Fireball for that exact reason. It does feel like that's the primary reason why Bowler Graveyard Freeze has fallen out of favor by comparison.
And then on the other side of it, one of the most popular decks in the game, we saw it a lot yesterday, is going to be just this Hog EQ cycle, going with Fire Spirit instead of Electro or Ice.
And Ian is one of the best Hog EQ players in the game. Really, really talented with this deck, with all variants. You saw him yesterday. He was playing Spear Goblins versions, Musketeer versions, kind of all over the place. He just really has this whole concept nailed down.
Yeah, and Serenity Brawl is just kind of doubling down on what you're talking about right there, saying this is Ian's best deck. He's one of the best in the world with Hog EQ. And then someone else saying, bro, I wanted to participate in this. You still can, just not this weekend, but there is one more week of open qualifiers. Go and follow along with Royale Masters, and you, Snowstorm, can compete next weekend.
I really love Ian's call here, going with the Inferno Tower variation in game number 2. And obviously in this matchup certainly has its pretty significant benefits, and so far paying off.
Yeah, misses the NATO there by a hair, and it overspends with the Barb Barrel there and ends up taking a hit on that right-hand side. Not great there for Inthrill, but I guess the only positive is that he knows that Ian's going to have to keep working in this lane. So now, as you can see, Ian with the bowler cycled in the back, Ian looking to maybe go to the left-hand side.
Nice Fire Spirit to protect the Firecracker, just to get that E-Dragon in a lot more trouble, but now pretty big push on the right-hand side, and Inthrill has plenty for Freeze.
Freeze down. Balloon going to get taken off by these Firecrackers, but a raged up bowler should get on tower. No, last-second Skeletons next round.
You have to imagine that Ian's played this exact matchup dozens of times.
Hundreds,
how popular Bowler Loon Freeze is.
Yeah, and you can see he's not really over-committing anywhere. He's just taking chip value when he can. Anytime he doesn't know what to do and he doesn't have a Firecracker, and he already has a Firecracker on the board, he's just going to EQ cycle. He's not in a bad spot here, really, because the pressure that he's creating is making it really tough for Inthrill to put together the pushes he'd like.
Still not out of the woods yet. 842 on the right-hand side, getting that log cycle in. And really, the Inferno Dragon is the reason why Ian's in this one. I think Latactor said the same thing in chat here. If it were Tesla, this would be a GG well played. Yeah, against NATO, Bowler, Loon, Freeze, Tesla would be done. So far able to hold on, but it's getting harder and harder as Elixir starts to flow more and more.
So that raged up bowler going to throw one big boulder towards that Hog. Hog does connect with 347 left. Ian just needs to cycle his way through this, which is why you see the pressure coming in from Inthrill at the bridge, not letting those EQs come down.
Yeah, it's smart pressure here. But I don't know if he has anything to do. He's going to have to NATO this Hog here, NATO it well.
Yep.
And he does avoid the shot, so that's a big moment. Loon getting in very deep, that Inferno late.
And that's huge. That last second freeze is massive. Earthquake comes down, but it's not going to be enough. Needs to cycle his life right now, and it does look like Ian's going to take the game still. But my goodness, was that closer than he wanted it to be.
And you know what? I think that maybe, just maybe, Inthrill popped that freeze a half second early.
Yeah.
He might have been able to get 2 shots of that balloon out if he'd been a little bit later with it, but you're playing with fire there at that point. Does the balloon survive that extra half second or not? So a tough spot for him, Ian, with a great deck pick and a great win to send us to game number 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Evening things up here as we go to game number 3 and looking at what's still available for these guys. Still a lot of options out there. So you saw Ian in that game. I think what I really liked about what he did was that he never found himself reaching for offense, right? He never did. And that's the worst thing you can do when you're playing Hog EQ. You always have to know, and you'll hear anyone talk about it as all the pros that out there are streaming and putting up YouTube content, they all have a video or have videos of playing this deck. You always have to know when you need to defend and when you need to send in a Hog Rider. And it seems so simple, it seems so elementary when you say it out loud, but the worst thing you can do is send in those Hogs when you're down an Elixir and they have defensive options, and then you can't deal with the counter push. And I love what Ian did there because it did get really close at the end.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of times when I thought that looked like there's going to be a nice overwhelm on the part of Inthrill. And again, going the Inferno Tower version over a Tesla version was absolutely huge. If this was Tesla, it'd be a different tune. It would have been Inthrill with a pretty significant win. Even then, even with the Inferno Tower, I do think that matchup may be slightly favored Inthrill just because of the number of ways to control a Hog Rider. And then whether you're doing it with the NATO to control or NATO's out of cycle, and you start to build, you play defense and build a big counter push. But really, the Inferno Tower was the key to making that not be an insane imbalance.
100%, man. And if you go and you look at the actual matchup conversation online, 150,000 games played with Bowler Loon Freeze. And against Hog Rider does have a disadvantage, or Bowler Loon Freeze has a 54% advantage to win. That's what I'm trying to say. He does have the matchup, like you said, Rich. There's so many ways to deal with that Hog, with the Bowler, with the NATO, with the Freeze if you need it, with the Lumberjack. There's a lot of great ways to deal with it, but just not able to put it together here was Inthrill.
And that's the matchup numbers for the Inferno Tower version of it, or for the Tesla version?
That's the Tesla version.
Yeah. Right, that's the Tesla
better version.
So that Inferno Tower, that Inferno Tower totally changed the game.
Just a slower cycle, but still able to do it, and really impressive stuff there from Ian. I love that deck. I pushed my highest trophies with that deck. I love watching it play because it's so many micro interactions, and like I was just talking about, knowing when to go on offense and knowing when to defend. But it's really hard to do at the highest level, and it's why I think this deck is so great for duels, is you're not relying on it to win everything, but it is going to have some really great matchups in a best of 3.
Yeah, that's really. Oh, I'm not logged in, so I can't go into matchup data on Royale API. Man, I got to go ahead and get myself logged in. Interesting choice there from Inthrill. Ian goes comfort in game number 2 with the tournament on the line, and Inthrill winning with Mortar Cannon Cart with a deck that really isn't designed for a Hog matchup in game number 1. I'm surprised he didn't just try to straight up snipe in game number 2.
Well, maybe we'll see some of that here in game number 3. Obviously, with what we're talking about, Ian does not have Hog Rider and Earthquake and all the things that you just saw. On the other side of it, Inthrill doesn't have arrows, doesn't have log. Maybe we see some bait coming out.
Ram Rider mostly, whatchamacallit, I was going to say Ram. The Bandit mostly in bridge spam variations. There is a bait deck that you saw me playing I think earlier today that does run the Bandit. Of course, this is Bandit with Witch, so maybe Bag is picking Inthrill's decks here for game number 3.
Yeah, really surprised to see the Witch here, and the Witch usually only shows up in like giant graveyard decks for the most part, which this clearly is not with all the other cards we've seen here from Ian. Yeah, curious. From Inthrill, so very curious.
Curiouser and curiouser, one might say. Musketeer to the right-hand side with the Mortar, and this is not dissimilar from what Inthrill was running earlier on. Ian now the one going Mortar Miner. I got caught for a second there. I almost thought that Ian had run that there was someone running the same deck back one more time. But we're okay. That change in duel mode hard to keep up with sometimes.
So Inthrill still has yet to show his true win condition. He does have aspects of bridge spam. He also has aspects of graveyard, but he also has Witch. So we'll see.
Maybe his win condition is just aspects.
Hey, tell me if you agree that Witch should be legendary and the Night Witch people don't like it. I don't know about that. I think things have changed a little bit, but Night Witch has been the stronger card for a long time.
Yeah, Witch only feels legendary when you're sub 6,000 trophies.
Yeah.
And then anytime you see Witch above 6,000 trophies, you're like, yes, thank you.
So Miner getting picked up by that Mega as Intro just kind of setting up his offensive push, trying to clean up that mortar.
30 seconds left in regulation time, and so far, it's been Ian with the slight chip damage on the left-hand side, that 18-14 remaining, but you know, the longer this goes, the more it feels like Inthrill's going to be able to hold up. I saw you tilt your head there, Andrew. What's
I just am wondering what. I mean, it still just feels like Graveyard, I guess, at this point. Still looking at the cards that are out there, and the fact that Witch kind of couples well with Graveyard, which would also make sense as to why Inthrill hasn't really gone on offense at all. But, you know, he needs to create something here. I guess he's just waiting for triple.
Yeah, it might be. I mean, he's keeping the damage mostly in check, although that mortar was a bit more probably than he expected in that moment. 1587, the mark on the right-hand side, and so far Ian pitching a shutout. And here you go, it was Graveyard.
Yeah, Graveyard finally comes down. A lot of good responses. Spear Goblin's low, get the cannon cart up high, Fireball can't take both off the board, and Ian looking like he's actually in a pretty good spot here, especially now that he knows 100% it is Graveyard. He's going to be able to set that line up at the bridge with his Knights a lot more easily while cycling those cannon carts in the back for safety.
Yeah, interesting Fireball choice there for Inthrill to focus on the cannon cart as opposed to on the spears, and still hurting right now. He is at 1299 on that right-hand side.
One of these guys going to go on to our finals. Play for that better part of $5,000. The other one going to go to our third place match, which, you know, winner of the third place match, I think, walks away with like $500. Not bad either.
Of course, wouldn't mind a bit more than that as we go to our final 53 seconds. And Inthrill, you know, you feel like triple elixirs when you have your chance to go, but don't know if he really has the chance here. That mortar putting pressure on the right-hand side. He's going to go ahead and just go full send on that left-hand lane, but delivery high cleans up that Witch easily. Cannon cart in the middle, and this feels like a game over.
Yeah, really, really nice high delivery there. Tower untouched, which is incredible when you talk about all that was just sent in. And then as you were just talking about, Rich, that mortar connecting on the right-hand side once again, bringing that tower down to 720. Just nothing but trouble here for Intrill. And again, look at that, mortar on tower again.
Yeah, I mean, he might even finish tower here. Hasn't felt the need to. Goes Fireball, and that's a GG. Man, just a complete shutdown play by Ian. Inthrill not able to get going. He had to play defensive the entire time, and then at the moment it went to triple elixir, he wasn't in a position where he could play offensively. He was in a position where he still had to play defensively, so he has to sort of somewhat ignore the mortar, go full send on the left-hand lane. Doesn't pay off, and that's it.
And again, this is no surprise from Ian. You know, he was playing in a very, very difficult group. I mean, all the groups are pretty tough, but you talk about the people that he had to beat to end his day yesterday. You know, there was people like Abdu Judo, Lucas, and Predator that he ran to in this group, and he was 7-0. And what he's doing today here on Sunday, just kind of moving through this bracket without an issue.
Yeah, completely without issue, and Ian's definitely, like we talk about it. Again, there's a list of guys. Adriel is one of them. Arden Toas is one of them. Ian's one of them. There's a list of those guys who are on the upcoming class who you just expect to see great things from in 2022. You know, you never know who's going to retire at the end of 2021 after our World Finals, and this guy right here who's in the finals against Jonah, he looks like he's setting himself up for a huge year upcoming.
Yeah, so a CMG finals here between Jonah and Ian, and then of course our third place match, which we'll be seeing here in just a moment, between Bag and Inthrill. Both of them going to need to bounce back from their previous sets and see if they can take home that third place win. Look, I mean, third place still great. Like we said, we get a little bit of cash, but you're going to get points, which are all going to lead towards our playoffs in just a few weeks. Really, really important to rack those points up. Bag and Inthrill, it's going to be an interesting one. Two very, very different styles of play, and I mean, I guess honestly, if you're talking about Bag and anyone else, it's usually always very different styles of play, other than maybe if he was to play against OP Sam. But you know, that's feels like a tough order to get.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question now is, now that the championship isn't on the line, does Bag go even crazier with the wild decks here? And what kind of pressure does that put on Inthril as we go into our first game of number 3? We're a bit late here, and it's some variation of P.E.K.K.A Heal Spirit, maybe P.E.K.K.A Loon somehow. Inthril going with Royal Hogs.
Yeah. And I believe this is going to be... Oh, nope, a reset there. I was going to say, I didn't know they were already in game number 3. One thing that's kind of fun is that, just getting notified here by production, none of the players that were in the top 8 last week made the top 8 this week. So, once again, we talk about anyone being able to qualify, you can do it. Anyone could be in the top 8. None of the same repeater here. We're going to have a different weekly champion, and that's one of the coolest things about Royale Masters.
And we're going to have Bag taking a huge chunk to open things up. It is P.E.K.K.A Loon with Electro Dragon and Mother Witch. This is, I would call it nonsense, but it's working.
Yeah.
And now we'll see what he does against these pigs in the left-hand lane.
Yeah, P.E.K.K.A Loon is always a rough deck to run into. It definitely feels like a 6,000 trophy type deck. But you know what? He's using it here in competitive, and like you said, man, it's working out really well. 424 remaining on Inthril's tower.
Well, you have one of the all-time ladder greats, P.E.K.K.A Loon freeze for Anaban, and you know, you see what he can do with it. P.E.K.K.A Loon, when you get the right matchups for it, is nasty, and clearly with how Anaban's able to play it on ladder, I mean, obviously there's also the sniping there. Let's not discount that. But with the way Anaban's able to play it, there is outplayability.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I've never been able to replicate it myself, but at the moment in a good spot, although, and again, here comes Wizard one more time from back.
You know, and the Wizard in this matchup is kind of fun. It's going to really help him with dealing with the Skeleton Dragons, the Mother Witch, those hog pushes coming in, so it's going to actually fare very, very well here for Bag. I think what's interesting, though, is when you look at what he's running into, the fact that that cannon cart can come off of its wheels and will always be played into that P.E.K.K.A means exactly what we're seeing here is Bag's going to try to split the two up and go opposite lane just like this. Bloon's going to connect again. Easy cleanup with that Electro Dragon, and he basically just kind of, as I was talking about it, he showed you exactly what he needed to do, perfectly executed.
Yeah, a NATO Electro Dragon combo working out perfectly. Full send to the right-hand side for Inthril. Cannon Cart does connect, but only one piggy getting on through. Tries to go one more time, not going to be there quickly enough. Bag going to take game number 1 in our third-place match.
Yeah, you know, he does it with a P.E.K.K.A Loon deck with Mother Witch. Why not an Electro Dragon? And it feels like the moment we mentioned the Electro Dragon, it's been in almost every single game since, and you can see the utility that it's getting right now. Like you said, man, no lightning in the meta, not easy to rocket, only rocket shows up in one deck. It basically only shows up in bait, or I guess there's also rocket cycle decks out there with Miner, but just not able to deal with that Electro Dragon, starting to become the it factor of our Sunday today.
Yeah, you know, we've talked about weekend metas, and this certainly seems to be the weekend of the E-Drag meta, so nice work for it so far. Of course, Bag cannot go back to that well one more time in the remaining 2 games, up to 2 games of this one. But also, you know, we talk about him being okay burning cards. E-Drag has been critical, has been central for him, but gets the win with it. And now he also, again, Wizard and Heal Spirit both out. That leaves you a lot of options in game 2.
For sure. I feel like when we're watching Bag play, the only things he's actually going to miss are the Wizard and the Balloon, because he seems to play them both so much. But that obviously leaves so many doors still open for him. And then, of course, when you look at Inthril losing, every card still available. It's so hard to even talk about or analyze games that Bag is involved in, because I don't know what Inthril did wrong there, and I don't know what Bag did right there. It always just feels like when he runs into players, they either have the correct responses or they don't. You know what I mean? It's not always just about outplayability. It's so much about matchup here.
Well, you also look at this and you go, logically, you feel like you should be able to find spots for those Royal Hogs to sneak on through against this deck that is running P.E.K.K.A instead of Mega Knight, not running a Fireball, not running a building, not running any of the traditional splash troops. The Wizard able to get it done and not end up being a dead card for Bag. And then that time he was able to get it together with the Electro Dragon NATO combination. Yeah. With the E-Drag having already gotten its value already. So, you know, you look at that and you think that, hey, maybe Inthril should be able to pull this one out. Doesn't, and now he's playing an elimination match.
So here we go. Inthril back up against the wall. 4th place is going to be the trophy he takes if he can't take this game off of Bag, but we'd love to see a game 3. And there we go. Another one of Bag's favorite cards comes out in the Prince.
And that's going to annoy Inthrill to have played those bats against the E-Spirit and not gotten the King Tower activation. So it's a little frustrating for him. First blood drawn by Bag, 2350 with that poison tick as we get past the first minute of gameplay.
Okay, so Inthrill going with a very fast minor giant deck here, and there you go, Prince coming out late.
And Bag pulling out the Barb Hut.
Why
So
not?
I think his mission is to prove that every card is viable. I think that's what it is.
Well, and also, like, you look at what Inthrill's running here, and, like, talk about this matchup. E-Spirit for exactly that. E-Spirit for the bats there. He's got a Barb Hut here to deal with the Giant and the Prince, right? You've got one building there that's going to deal with both those every single time. And then you get this...
What?
How do you not just laugh at this? How do you just not
What?
laugh at these decks? And Inthrill, at this point, I think Inthrill already knows it's over for him. And you can't
Here's
win
how you don't
this.
laugh. Here's how you don't laugh, Andrew. You beat Inthrill right now.
Yeah,
That's how you don't laugh at this. You're like, what are you doing? Why? Why? Inthrill plays the
three
E-Wiz,
crown.
but that's... My lord.
What in God's name just happened? That was... Wow. All right. Dude, we don't even need to be here
Yeah.
for matches like that.
That was insanity. I'll watch Bag play all day. I'll watch him over and over again.
I know. Let's get some hype in the chat, or an L in the
Come
chat
on.
if you're a fan for Inthrill. But how could you not just love what Bag did right there? The fastest game I think we've seen in all of Royale Masters, and he does it with this crazy Hog Rider, Barb Hut, Inferno Dragon, Prince deck with guards and log and E-Spirit. And you talk about matchup, like truly the best. You're like, pick the best cards that you get. There's no way for, even if Inthrill even got to that point, there was no way for him to stop the Hog Rider. It's just craziness to me, man.
Why was there a Hog Rider in there?
I know.
What was the Hog Rider doing? Where did you come from? What is going on? Guys, forget F's in the chat or forget L's in the chat or anything. The way you rep Bag in the chat is just smash your keyboard. Like, here, I'm gonna do it right now in the chat. Just, if you're for Bag, just smash the keyboard and hit a bunch of I'm hitting a bunch of buttons. There you go. I might get, the Moobot might kill me on this one, but there you go. Get a bunch of random letters in the chat for Bag, because that's what it feels like.
Imagine that moment for Inthrill when his push dies after he sees the Barb Hut take out his Giant plus the Prince, and then he sees the Prince and the Inferno plus 4 Barbs come, and then out of nowhere a Hog Rider comes to the party. That's when I guarantee you, actually I can't guarantee because Inthrill probably has more self-control than me. I would have thrown my phone in that moment. Just craziness.
Oh yeah, no. There's so many phone breaker moments, and you can see Moobot now having a day as everyone's doing it. I think we found what we do for Bag now. I think it's clear. Yeah, there you go. GG.
Wow. So Bag done for the day. Inthrill done for the day. Bag walks away with a third place 2-0 win here over Inthrill. First coming out with P.E.K.K.A. Loon Freeze. No. Just P.E.K.K.A. Loon with E-Dragon, Heal Spirit, Mother Witch Wizard. And then, of course, in game number 2, the madness that you just saw. A push coming across the bridge of 4 Barbs, a Prince, an Inferno Dragon, and a Hog Rider to boot. And that's going to be it for Inthrill. My
head hurts right now. I've been drinking so much water, I shouldn't have a headache. But I felt for Inthrill so hard when he was looking at the Barbs and the Inferno Dragon and the Prince, and then he probably went, you know how I was like, a Hog Rider? He probably went like, Hog Rider? Why? Why Hog Rider?
Where am I? It's a nightmare.
What is happening?
So,
oh my lord,
that just leaves one match left, and it is our finals after a very quick third place match. Congratulations to Bag and Inthrill both, but Bag takes that 2-0. And another American in the finals here in Ian going up against his teammate CMG Jonah.
And I want to take the chance to apologize to whoever's trying to mod this chat right now, but that's the official Bag celebration. So just don't have him back, and you'll be fine. But oh my word, that was crazy. Yeah, this is how Bag makes his deck, says Kaiser Soze. Yeah, that's why that's the Bag Smash. That's what we call it. It's the Bag Smash.
The Bag Smash. You love it.
Yeah.
That's going to be his next character name out there. Well, who knows if it would have worked in any other situation, any other matchup, or against any other player, but for Bag, it worked out phenomenally here in our third place matchup. Now on to Jonah and Ian, two great players.
And we've seen Ian go comfort. We've seen Ian run the Hog EQ. We have not seen Jonah run the Eagle and Battle Healer. And, I'm very curious to see based off of what we see in game number 1, if maybe we see Jonah do that in game 2 or game 3.
Yeah, and talking about what Jonah's already done today, he 2-1'd Bag, he 2-0'd Tico, and he 2-0'd Jorge Luis on the other side of it. And Ian, we saw him take out Antonio, Alexi, Inthrill, and now on to Jonah. So it does feel that that Jonah has had just a little bit more difficult of a path, at least today. But Ian's gameplay has been exceptional.
Joey Tion saying Bags on that uses the generate deck feature. So here we go, our grand finals for our opening weekend. Jonah and Ian, and Ian throws 4 pigs directly into a Mega Knight, and now GY down. I don't think Jonah can get those Spear Goblins off. There's a snowball, and oh boy.
Wow, that's trouble. Late Royal Delivery here going to come in and help clean up the skeletons, but the Mega Knight going to splash onto tower, and Ian really upset about this opening exchange between him and Jonah. We're going to bring this tower down to 900 HP, and already calling good game. Definitely feels like it.
So this is the hard part, right? You see Fisherman, and you assume no Mega Knight. There are so few decks right now running Fisherman Mega Knight, and so Ian feels comfortable going pigs all the same lane. But when he goes pigs the same lane, and it's a gamble, and look, it's a good gamble, right? It's one of those. It's like if you're at the table in Vegas and you go to a roulette table, and they've replaced half the blacks with reds, you go, sure, I'll bet on red, but there's still a quarter chance you hit black, and that's what happened here. Ian had a good bet, but end up coming up wrong, and there you go.
And it's crazy when you look at what Jonah has in his deck, man. It feels like he was just expecting Ian to run Royal Hogs. Every single card that he has, other than his win condition, is going to make that life a little bit harder for a Royal Hogs player. Even the Fish Boy, just to activate King Tower early on, but literally everything else in there is basically a direct counter, and Ian really unhappy about it. And also when you look at what Ian has to deal with the graveyard, right? You saw it, you said it, you're like, I don't know if he can clean the Spear Goblins off. That's what Ian was praying for, but nope, Snowball's there.
Yeah, Snowball came in, did him dirty, and now Graveyard in early here. It's in a tank for the Brawler rather than the other way around, as he sets up Fishboy to the right-hand side. Does Jonah to work against that Musketeer?
And look at that. Brawler just right on tower. Cannon Cart just too far outside. Game over. Game 1 over already. And yes, to answer your question in the chat, someone was asking, is this the finals? Yes, this is the finals. Unfortunately for Ian here, as he has found maybe his most difficult start to a set in his entire run here at Royale Masters.
And just when you think there's a little light at the end of the tunnel right there for Ian, you see him looking at all that stuff on the board. Ewiz comes out and just shuts down that entire push. And that's a rough GG well played here in game number 1. Ian certainly unhappy with that.
Yeah, Jonah's got to be feeling like he's playing with house money right now. I don't know if it was a perfect snipe or if that's just the luck of the draw there. It feels like it had to have been a snipe, though, when you talk about the amount of responses he had. So now going into game number 2, we've seen Ian do it before, Rich. He does like to go to comfort. I don't think that would be a good option, especially against Jonah, but maybe it's that who's going to blink first thing. You think it'd be so dumb for me to run my comfort deck because I did it before. I'm going to do it anyway because you think that there's no chance that happens. Maybe that happens here for Ian.
Yeah, that's a really hard call.
Yeah.
Cage is out, Mega Knight is out. The other thing, too, is so you think about it, right? So many good hog counters are still in available for Jonah here, too. Right? He didn't play a lot of central hog counters. So it's one of those ones where that seems to me like doing that in game number 2. I understand why he would do it. I just don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, all the, some of the most popular ones, the Fireball, the Snowball, the MK aren't there, the Cage isn't, but that doesn't mean there aren't so many good options. I mean, literally you just swap out or swap in, the Bomb Tower or the Tesla with the Log, and you've already solved your problem. So, or you just pop in a Valkyrie, right? Valkyrie wasn't in that deck, a Building plus Valkyrie, so a lot of great options there, and I don't think it really gets better when it comes to, or in terms of picking decks than what Jonah just did there for Ian. And that's really tough now because that's also the mental thing of hitting you in the face of going, well, I think he just sniped me. So now what do I do? Now I don't know what I'm supposed to do in game number 2. How do I keep them guessing? And like you said, going back to Royal Hogs feels appetizing, but that also is predictable.
Yeah, Royal Hogs would be interesting here. Hogguard would be interesting here. I just don't like either of them. And this is the hard part, and Ian does get his pick in, so let's go ahead into game number 3. and see the plan here. Does he go with one of those two, or does he switch it up entirely? We'll see.
Yeah, second game here of our finals. Jonah on top and up 1 over Ian, and he goes right back to those piggies. Good call.
And no Fireball, no Mega Knight, so why not? And that's a huge opening push.
Yeah, and the way that Jonah's playing defense here makes me very curious as to what he's planning on doing, right? He didn't overspend at all. You know he had other cards available that would have got those piggies off the tower sooner. So what's the plan?
And that Inferno Dragon going to get bad value on both sides of the board. And this is a complete reverse of fortunes. This is the opening salvo for game 1 went all Jonah's way. Game number 2 is all Ian.
Yeah, you talk about even just the Zappies as opposed to that Inferno Dragon, like you said. Inferno just not going to be a great presence on either side of the board. But now Ian going to have to deal with this push, and that is a beautifully put together push when you talk about that Lumberjack coming in late, man.
Yeah, this 6 Loon going to connect with the Balloon. The Fireball comes out late here, some more chops.
Wow.
And there you go, lead switches to Jonah.
Yeah, Jonah up by just about 150 HP here over Ian. After taking that Lumberjack hit coming in, that was a very expensive spend, a 14 elixir push that paid off.
So as we go past the midway point of regulation time, Jonah has taken the lead back and now goes 3-3 split, 937 bottom left-hand side, 1082 on the top right. Jonah, with all the cards available, chose to make a bit of a change here. Or Ian with all the cards available goes with a different, interesting look here in game number 2. Jonah, of course, not able to play the cards from game number 1 as he won in this modified version of our dual mode battles.
Yeah, and it's curious to me where Jonah's going to end up playing that Inferno Dragon. Does he just end up cycling it when he doesn't have anything else to do in the back? But really, like you called in the first moments, Rich, it doesn't feel like there's much of a place at all for the Inferno Dragon against this specific matchup, maybe right on top of the Flying Machine.
I was about to say the same thing. That seems like the only place that makes sense for it is sitting on it, and if the Flying Machine crosses the bridge, Inferno Dragon, and then go from there. Other than that, though, it does seem like it's an ill-fated choice most of the time.
So basically triple spell here coming out for Ian, which is going to help a lot with dealing with those balloons, but not going to help a lot with dealing with these cannon cards. Cannon card on tower will get reset, but that looks like it could be the nail in the coffin here for Ian. A very quick, maybe 2-0. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying he has to go hard on the right-hand side here, and he does. And he gets that right back in the mix here, 233,
Ooh,
170.
That's Fireball. That's Fireball, right?
Ooh, wow.
Wow. I cannot believe that last-second turnaround by Ian. Just enough to bring it within Fireball range. We're going to game 3.
There wasn't a great Royal Hogs counter in this deck. There wasn't a phenomenal one, and we saw in the opening moments where Ian took advantage of that, and in the closing moments, Ian does it again. Just had to go all the way in, put his hand cards on the table, and got the win.
Now, this becomes an instance where you have to go and look at Jonah now, because you put him on Royal Hogs. We were both saying Royal Hogs seems like the most appetizing thing to play just because so many great counters are out for it. Now, while I think it could have been the wrong call to play directly against Royal Hogs again, you got to at least give yourself some better options there. You know, the fact that it is such an obvious play doesn't make it a bad play. And you know, sure. Ian just goes, cool, I'm going to do it then. And like we saw there at the very end, just no way to deal with that pileup.
And look, Jonah nearly took that win. I mean, that was just one, you know, a little bit of a difference away from Jonah having already secured that before that point. But that's one of the hard parts about playing Lumberloon overall, or balloon decks in general, is there's so often when if you don't get the win on that specific push, where you leave yourself in a really vulnerable position. And that's what we saw here. There was just no clear, good answer that could respond quickly enough to shutting down those Royal Hogs. Fireball came in. You know, the arrows took care of the archers, the Fireball came in, took care of the tower, and that's GG.
So arrows, Fireball, and E-Spirit all unavailable for Ian. I would like to see Jonah go to the skies here in this final game. And when you talk about what's unavailable for Jonah, Fireball, Snowball, Goblin Cage, Fisherman, a lot of things there. Maybe he could also go not to the skies, but to another popular win condition in the Royal Giant in the meta right now, because he does have the other surrounding cards other than Fireball. I could see him swap in Lightning maybe with an RG. I mean, heck, we were talking about it before, but it doesn't have Lumberjack as the RG Furnace deck, but I actually wouldn't mind seeing Royal Giant here out of Ian. I don't think I want to see Hog EQ, though.
No, I don't want to see a hug EQ either in this situation. I mean, look, you think about it, we haven't seen Tesla yet from Jonah, and so Jonah very likely run something with Tesla here in game number 3, knowing that hog EQ was a possibility.
Yeah.
So now if I'm Ian, I'm building around that, right? I'm not running hog EQ because of that possibility of Tesla, and now I'm going, okay, what can I run that counters Tesla? And, you know, something that runs lightning could be really nice for him in this situation.
Yeah, and I want to go back and look at some of these other matchups that we saw out of Ian, because I might just be making this up in my mind, but I'm pretty sure Ian is a guy that doesn't actually play a ton of buildings. Yeah, I mean, looking at the last, the first 6 games I pulled up, I saw 1 Inferno Tower in there. So maybe, just maybe, you do go for something that is tower seeking. I mean, heck, I even saw someone in the chat write E-Giant. I don't know about that. We haven't seen a lot of E-Giant, but I do just like the idea of going for maybe something like that we're talking about, and the fact that Ian does not play a ton of buildings out there, and it is in those matchups where we found him struggle the most. So, like I said, I'd love to see a big beefy push there from Jonah in something like a Lava.
That would be interesting. I get nervous. I guess Lava doesn't really have a big problem against Hog, depending on the variant, obviously, but Jonah doesn't have a big problem of it. Of course, Delivery is available for Ian because he lost with it in game number 1, hasn't played it since. This is where I don't envy any analysts as they go, but he could do, but then what if, but then maybe, but then oh no, but then I haven't slept in 3 weeks and this is really starting to hurt my brain.
It's just so low stakes for us. We could just sit up here and just go, well, this is a good idea, that's a good idea, this matchup would be, but it's favorable, but no one's life is on the line here, and we are finally going into game number 3. Jonah on top, Ian on bottom. Jonah took game number 1. Ian bounced back with a last-second steal in game number 2 for our finals. Let's do this thing.
Here we go, and seeing Flying Machine out of Jonah, knowing that Fireball is not available, so obviously great time to go Flying Machine, and double bait here for Ian.
Yeah, and would have loved to keep that Dark Goblin alive. You can already see Ian throwing up the everything's fine Goblin. Wondering what he's thinking there.
So, minor Flying Machine guards, looking like lava here for Jonah. So you were calling for it?
Yeah, and I guess the positive for Ian to look at, or at least if you're a fan of Ian, is that if Jonah is going to go lava, Ian has a way to create a ton of pressure and a lot of damage in the opposite lane for very cheap.
And delivery is going to be really key for Ian here, but the big question for him is going to be how he deals with these flying machines, and it's poison.
It looks like a couple of you guys in the chat are trying to maybe keep up with the conversation that we're having because we haven't been breaking it down between every single game, but in the specific duels format of Royale Masters, you can only repeat cards that you lose with. So if you win with a deck, all 8 of those cards are not available for the rest of the set. However, if you lose with the deck, you can play whatever you'd like. And I was just going to say, man, we weren't able to get there in the conversation. The only building that we have seen Ian run, though, is Inferno, which is why I was thinking Lava Hound might not be the best, but I'd already committed so much to that conversation, and look at that, it's a Lava.
Man,
I mean, an
delivery, poison, and Inferno Tower. If you're gonna run a bait deck and you think you're gonna be up against Lava Hounds, hi. I mean, here you are running 3 great pieces, and now he's.
I was going to say, talking about why you and I are not analysts is exactly the conversation we're having of it's fun to talk about those matchups, but here we go. I was like, oh yeah, it'd be fun for Jonah to run Lava, but Ian calls him out for it. We'll see if it fares well.
And look at the value that Dark Goblin got.
Yeah.
That Dark Goblin got a piece of everything. I think it hit a tower. It didn't hit a tower. I think it hit a flying machine, a skeleton dragon, maybe some future card that hasn't been released yet got hit by that Dark Goblin. It was just everywhere.
And the Valkyrie still gets a shot on tower there. Dark Goblin going to get cleaned off the board there by the Miner, so a bit of a fortunate exchange there for Jonah. But Lava Hound is in, and yeah.
What Ian did just there was so brilliant by playing the Skarmy to protect against the Flying Machine, forced the Zap out, which meant Zap was not available to help with the Inferno Tower, and that just shut down that push. Ian putting together a hell of a performance here.
And this is what's so fun to watch great bait players do, is the relentless onslaught that they send in, recognizing, okay, well, this card's out of cycle, which means I need to go with this, or they just played this card, so that means I go with that attack instead, and making your opponent play uncomfortably. And now you see Jonah doing just that, having to switch lanes going into the weaker side here.
And no air plus no zap now. So cannot clear these the Skarmy off, cannot reset the Inferno Direct Tower. I mean, that was just... Ian is playing way ahead right now, and he's doing an amazing job of what you want to do with bait, which is force your opponent to use responses at the wrong time.
Yep, and that was just picture perfect once again. Goblin Barrel comes in, Poison takes the Flying Machine off the board. The pressure stays on because he knows the worst thing, Ian knows the worst thing that can happen for him is letting this push come behind a Lava Hound. But honestly, the way he's been dealing with it, it's been super easy. So he needs to get this Dark Goblin off the board, but it's so difficult because of that Skarmy. And that's game, man.
Down to 272 on that left-hand side. Gonna poison up high here as the E-Barbs come out, so good patience with that poison. Arrows trying to predict, but the Valve.
Yeah, and looking for the Skarmy there, but that would have been too obvious, and that was just beautiful. Yeah, that deserves a round of applause. Ian ending up being our second weekly champion here at Royale Masters, and the fact that he came back there in Game 2 and what he just did there in Game number 3 matchup-wise, my goodness. We put Jonah on lava. Well, so did Ian and his analyst. Inferno, Delivery, Skarmy, and then all the bait in the world. That was a fun one to watch.
And then he just played it in a way that made Jonah uncomfortable the entire time. Just being like, dude, where do you want to use your arrows? Nope, I'm deciding. How about your zap? You don't get to have that either. Deliver. I mean, that was just, you know, this tournament's called Royale Masters. That was a masterful performance.
You know, there's situations in games when you're playing and you run into someone and they're just relentless from the beginning. It feels like they're spending down to zero every single interaction that's out there. And you go, you know what? Eventually, I'm going to catch up with this person. I'm going to catch them out of cycle. They're going to overspend and I'm going to turn this game around. That's probably what Jonah was looking for. Ian never gave him that opportunity. Always one step ahead, like you said. Let's take a look at our bracket and the journey that Ian went on. We were just talking about how his run today on Sunday was maybe just a little bit easier than, you know, Jonah's, because Jonah had to play Jorge Luis, Tico, and Bag, all relatively well known, but Ian just coming through in style in our finals.
Yeah, I mean, this was a nice little path to the final for Ian. Faced some adversity there in that final one with having a reverse sweep here against Jonah. And look, he might have had the smaller matchups, but every single match today was a 2-1. Every single match today, he had elimination on the line. So not just good gameplay, good analysis, but good fortitude to stay in a lot of elimination situations.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point that you make there. You know, looking at where he was at in game number 2, it looked like Jonah was just going to make this a quick 2-0, but he's able to stick with it, stay in it. And talking about the mental fortitude that takes, that's what you have to be the best in the world. You have to be able to let games go to win sets, and 2-1 all the way through is perfect evidence of just that.
Well, Ian, again, having a great year, and remember that Ian is ranked 34 for CRL, which means he is in the last chance qualifier. So you see a guy who just has to, one of the many people has to just win 2 best of 3s, and he makes his way to World Finals. Ian has a very good chance of that.
And you, yes, you could be here at Royale Masters next weekend with Rich and I casting your matches. All you got to do is go follow Royale Masters on all the platforms out there. Go to Twitter, though, to find the Discord. Discord will lead you to all the instructions to be here. $5,000 given away. Jonah just won $1,200, and of course, Ian walks away with $2,400. Legolas, our winner last week, walked away with $2,400. Wero was right behind him at $1,200, and these are big names in the space. Rich just talked about what Ian has done already this season. Well, last week we saw Legolas, who's lived in the shadows of Igor and Lapakati for a long time, defeating someone like Wero, who's been known as the best bridge spam player in the world. Talking about the best in the world, you could be here too at Royale Masters.
Yeah, there's plenty of chances to both earn points and cash here from that prize pool. And of course, points are critical for making those playoffs with the $10,000 prize pool for that event. And right now, tied at the top of the leaderboards are 2 winners in Ian and Legolas, both with 15 points. You can see Wero and Jonah right behind them at 12 each, Bag and Adriel, and then Inthrill and Paradox. So a lot of young talent here. Of course, a lot of players who've been around for a long time, but taking an opportunity here to really put a stamp on Clash Royale. And you can catch up with them. You can see how much catch-up work Ian did with one weekend, so don't you hesitate. Make sure you're here next weekend as well.
I'm so glad you pointed that out, because you look at this leaderboard, you look at 15 points being the top from our 2 first-place finishes, which means next week it could be anyone up there, or you could get second place and still be in the top 8. And the top 8 get that golden ticket to playoffs, like you're talking about, $10,000 on the line. You get to avoid the LCQ. You never want to go to the last chance qualifier. You're going to go run up against the best players in the world who are fighting for their lives. We're getting ready for it at CRL. Royale Masters is doing it in a couple weeks. Avoid that LCQ by signing up for next week's competition.
And even then, you can still get into the last chance qualifier. Basically, what we're telling you is if you're watching right now,
yes,
you have a path to these playoffs, to this championship overall. It's there for you, whether it's through qualifying directly or through the last chance qualifiers. And we'll be here with you for that. We are back next weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Make sure you tune in. For my friend Andrew, for me, Rich Slayton, for everyone at Royale Masters, thanks for joining us on this Sunday. We'll see you back next weekend. And as always, be excellent to each other.
Bye.
Tell me that you want me. I can see you want me by the look in your eyes. We come alive. We come alive. We come alive in the nighttime. Something about how we dance in the moonlight. That look in your eyes, it tells me that you want me and all my loving. We come alive in the nighttime. You and I, we come alive. Oh, 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 we come alive. Yeah, we come alive. Oh, 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 we come alive. She was in love with a boy, in love with a girl, so in love with the world, so beautiful. She was in love with the night, the way the sun shines. All she needed was light to have to hold, and nobody could make her feel down. She was always smiling from ear to ear, and everybody wondered around. Will she ever know the feeling of tears? All she said to them was live your life just like you're young again.